From the engineering firms with regards to RFQs on County Road 181C and Walton Bridge Road. Each is going to be afforded 5 minutes to make a presentation, and first scheduled is Atkins Engineering. Also, when you state your name, please spell your last name for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Greg Allen with Atkins. This is Kevin Morgan. My last name is spelled A-L-L-E-N. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to you this morning on behalf of Atkins. I guess I'll go right into it. The approach to these two projects are similar, but they are kind of drastically different projects. The first one we'll talk about is the 181C, and it's basically just improvements to make sure the clear zone is okay, make sure we have an effective pavement design, make sure that all the clear zone requirements, including head walls, mitered end sections, any pipe extensions, any culverts, any trees. We did notice during our field review that there were some off-vehicle tracking, basically, so there might be some areas at some intersections that we did improve by adding some asphalt where that vehicle tracking doesn't occur in the future, and it basically stays on pavement. We'll turn to now the Walton Bridge Road is an existing dirt road, as you may know, and basically our thoughts on that are it is deficient right now. There's a lot of sediment tracking into the wetlands and nearby wetlands and onto private properties. There are some vertical curve issues and horizontal curves. You need to go pretty low speed road, and when we're looking at that job, we'll probably look at different alternatives and make sure we stay within budget to meet those deficiencies and try to mesh them. Some of the areas we might have to post and really reduce the speed, because if you build it, they'll come. Whenever you put asphalt on there, there's going to be a lot more traffic on that road because it'll be used as a cut through, and we don't want to make sure there's no accidents. There's some trees and some key locations that we'll have to talk to the county staff and determine if we want to remove them or if we want to shield them. But one of our first things on any job is we'll ride the project with the county engineering staff and the construction staff. Make sure we include all those issues in there, and make sure we know that these are both SCOP grants. So the county is getting DOT monies for these projects, and we want to use that to the best of our abilities and to the best of your abilities. We want to get the best product out there that we can get for the money and use all of the money. We know that there's a tight time frame on both these projects, so we're going to provide a schedule that meets those needs. Now, we know that it has to be constructed by March of next year, absolutely finished construction. So that's a tight time frame. We have the staff to be able to do that. We know that the concept plans will produce and will prepare a cost estimate, and that's the first look that the county engineering staff will have to look at it, and we'll make sure we stay within budget. Once that's approved, we'll go forward with final design plans. A little bit of, I guess, our history. We're very familiar with Walton County. We have a good understanding of both projects. We've ridden them both several times. We have a good working relationship with both county design staff and construction staff. Our previous experience in the area, we're the EOR for US 331 for Walton County on the two sections that are already built, the 4-laning. We're currently doing the CEI south of 20 down to the bridge for DOT. We're currently finishing up County Road 1084. It'll be hopefully be constructed next month. It'll be finished, and we're working on County Road 285 for y'all currently right now. Our past record, we strive on preparing perfect set of plans. There's never a perfect set of plans, but if there are any issues, we stand behind our plans and we'll resolve any issues as quickly as we can. And we know a lot of times there will be a utility issue that comes up on a project, whether it be on an extension or a cross drain or something, and we understand that time is money to contractors, and if there is an issue, we'll make sure we address it quickly and promptly with your staff. Our experience and capabilities, we're a multidisciplinary firm. We have offices in Panama City, Pensacola, Chipley, and we also have one on US 331, the CEI office that's handling that project south of 20. Our willingness, we are committed to meeting your budget and your time frame requirements, and we have the staff in the Panhandle that can do that. Our current workload, like I said, I mentioned that we're finishing up County Road 1084, and we're also working on County Road 285, and we're finishing up the April Storms project in the south end of the county. That should be finished in April. We strive ourselves on having repeat business. We prepare plans, and usually about 90% of the time we'll get a call back to do additional work for those clients. So we strive on having repeat business with all of our clients in the Panhandle, because not only do we work here, we also live here. All of our staff lives and works in the Panhandle, and we want to make the Panhandle a better place to live. With that, thank you.
Quick question. On the Walton Bridge Road, you mentioned that there's a horizontal curve. What's the speed limit on that? Do you know?
What's that? I think it's currently 25 is currently, but some of those current basically the sight distance on them is 0. When you come over the hill or around the corner, you don't even see. So if there were somebody there, it's a dangerous situation. So normally like I said, we'll have to post that down. It could be down even lower, or maybe we can make some improvements and increase that sight distance or lower that vertical curve to make it where we can increase the speed a little bit. Because, like I said, when you pave it, you're going to increase the speed. I mean, the people are just going to go faster.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
Yes. Allen, right? Mr.
Yes.
Allen?
Mm-hmm.
Both of these projects are in my district. We are about probably 75, 80%, maybe close to 90% done on the 183 project that's presently going on. And one thing I advocated under that, and I wanted to at least let all the proposed vendors to this project understand that we got X number of dollars that came from the state, and we want to use that X number of dollars. We were fortunate that what came in on the last bid on 183, we had some funds left over, and my direction to staff was to utilize those extra funds to improve the safety of that road in whatever means, but not to send it back to the state of Florida. So I just want to make sure you understood that is what I'll be looking for if you're selected. The second thing is identifying those locations on that roadbed that if you have to renew or rebuild or replace the culverts that are underneath there, that we have compaction at those points, because we run into that problem up here. We, the county, replaced some culverts on 183 that weren't compacted out. We were fortunate we had some excess funds from the grant that we were able to go back in there and correct it and fix it. We shouldn't have to do that. So I'm very much in favor of making sure we got the site work done, compaction to any of those particular culvert sites, so we don't have to come back there and cut part of a new road out to go in there and fix it. That's just my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones? Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
They were just sitting there without the dirt? Okay. Next up, we have DRMP Engineering. They're not going to be here. Okay, moving right along. Genesis Engineering. Okay, DRMP, come on up, please. When you state your name, please spell your last name for the record.
My name is Scott Early. That's E-A-R-L-Y.
Sure, floor is yours.
Time to go?
Yep.
All right. Well, my name is Scott Early, and I will be your project manager for these two important projects. Obviously, with 10 minutes to talk about two projects, we put together a little flyer here. And I hope I made enough copies to kind of go over some of the important issues for each project, and also a little relevant Walton County experience for you.
Thank you, Scott.
So we put that together, just like I said, for 10 minutes. So that gives you a little something to look at and think about. We did our field reviews. As you can see, we got our staff there taking a few measurements. I have them with me this morning. One of the more important things we thought was to introduce you to the actual design staff that's going to be doing the work and working with your staff hand in hand. We've got Travis Shannon here in the St. Patty's Day tie. He's going to be handling all the drainage. Brandon Tidwell with Shada will be handling the ecological standpoints of the project. Chad Friday is going to be our senior roadway engineer. Erica Jernigan will be our CEI. We understand there will be 2 contracts for CEI and for design awarded off of this. So we wanted you to meet these guys. These are the actual team members that worked on County Road 2A. Like I said, we've got experience in Walton County, just not working for Walton County. And this is the exact team that put this together, or put this project together. It's 2A from County Road 1087 to 331. That first segment was we worked close with the DOT. We understood that the pavement in that segment was in good shape, so we just went with 4-foot paved shoulders and then the associated pavement, safety improvements to kind of help save money and get the same quality project that we intended. The second segment was from 331 to Thad Bell Road, and with that one, the pavement condition was not in as good a shape. So we went with a 1-inch overlay, the 4-foot paved shoulders, and then the associated safety improvements as well with that one. We also did a safety study at State Road 285 and US 90. We recommended extending, or not extending, but constructing a merge lane, and then also lengthening the left turn lane of that. And those are two issues that the DOT has since implemented. So, like I said, we've worked in Walton County, just not for the county. We look forward to doing that. We presented to you in the past, and we feel like if we get a chance to work with you and your staff, you'll enjoy that relationship and the professionalism that we bring and the responsiveness that we bring, which is something we pride ourselves on. And to talk to the project issues specifically, County Road 181C, you got some severe pavement cracking out there, and how we address that, whether we do it with an Army layer or if the milling and resurfacing operations will cover that, was something that we'll have to discover early on in the design process and work with your staff to make sure we do what's economical and within the budget that the county has set for that. There are no significant drainage issues out there, although there is some property flooding, so that'll have to be addressed as well. And then you've got some safety issues with clear zone, head walls in the clear zone, and all that. And once again, working with your staff early in the process to make sure we have a unified approach to meet the budgetary constraints that you have will be very critical on that. For Walton Bridge Road, that's a dirt road paving project, so it's a little bit different. And probably the number one concern that we have with that is the fact that the existing roadway kind of meanders in and out of the right-of-way that we found out there. You should qualify for a permit exemption, but that permit exemption only comes if you keep the existing alignment. Well, part of that problem is that the existing alignment is outside the existing right-of-way, and then it's also, you have some substandard curves that we'll have to figure out how we're going to address and have a little give and take with the agencies on how many of these things we can correct, and once again, staying within your budgetary constraints. Like I said earlier, that we understand that the CEI is going to be awarded separately, but through this contract. And with that, I was going to let Erica Jernigan come up and talk a little bit. She handles all of our CEI here in the Panhandle.
Erica, spell your last name for the record.
Sir, it's Jernigan, Jernigan. Good morning, guys. As Scott mentioned, CEI will be handled differently on this contract, and I'm Erica Jernigan. I lead our CEI group out of Pensacola, Florida. Currently, we have a senior project engineer we would be able to offer for this project, 2 project administrators that have over 42 years of combined experience, 5 inspectors, 2 of which are asphalt plant certified. That gives us a little bit of versatility in manning these projects along with other projects that we may have going on. And we have an in-house experienced RCS. In looking at these 2 projects, we wanted to think about some of the things when it came to construction that we thought would be most important. One of those things was utility coordination. We want to do that early on, and we want to keep it throughout the project to make sure that there are no delays. The next was maintaining access to homes. It's extremely important in a location like this where homes may be a little bit more spaced out. We want to make sure that those homeowners know when delays may be coming, and that if we can recognize in advance that they may be in a special situation where we're having to extend a side drain or something and access may be a little bit limited for a day or 2, we want to go communicate with that homeowner in advance and make sure that they can make plans for that. Lastly, as Scott mentioned, one of the roadways, 181C, has a little bit of severe asphalt cracking. If the Army layer isn't within your budget and you choose to go with the 1-inch mill and resurface type of operation, I believe that the asphalt QC is going to be imperative. We are fortunate enough that we have 4 of our 8 or so employees that have worked for an asphalt paving contractor, and we know what it takes to do proper QC for asphalt. Some of those individuals worked in the QC department, some were in project management, and some were superintendents. So when we see the paver going down the road, if there's an issue, we'll be able to recognize it more quickly than some of your other opportunities. I hope that we have an opportunity to work for you guys and to work as an extension of the Walton County staff, and we look forward to working for you from the notice to proceed to the final acceptance. I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Thank you, Erica. Just in closing, DRMP has been doing work in the Panhandle for 20-plus years. Our company was founded in 1979. This staff, like I said, we've been working together for 10 years just on projects just like this. We've completed multiple projects under the district-wide safety contract for District 3, which are for these high-risk rural road jobs, which is very similar to County Road 181C. And over that time, we've developed a large list of clients. We'd like to add Walden County to that client. And with that, I certainly appreciate your time.
Commissioner Chapman, I think you've got some comments.
Yes, I do. Mr. Early, both of these projects are located in my district.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And I know we're going to have a certain amount of monies that come in.
Yes, sir.
And what I want to make sure of is whoever gets these contracts to make sure that we use every nickel that we get from the state and make sure we got the safest road out there.
Absolutely.
If there's any culvert work to be done across those roads, one thing I want to make sure and ensure that happens is that there is compaction around those points so that when you do the overlay, we don't have a dip develop in there.
Exactly.
We had that issue on our 183 project. So from here on out, at least in my district, my mandate to staff is to make sure that if we do any culvert work, the county, or if we have a contractor, that we make sure that the compaction is in place at these sites so we don't have to go back like we did on 183. It's still ongoing. That project's in my district too, and have to cut out and fix it and then put a new overlay over it.
Yeah, you don't want to patch right where you just have a brand new road.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. No, that's part of the design process. It's part of the CEI process, making sure you got the correct
The other thing I want to add too is the identification of driveways and turnouts along those roads to make sure that the site work and the prep work is done prior to putting on the finished coat of asphalt. Because what you end up doing is you have to go back at a later date, and you got a heavy equipment out there, and it causes issues with the new pavement. So I'm a firm believer that you need to have all your duckies in a row.
Yes, sir.
And have everything done on the preparation side before you put the finished product down. So that means somebody's going to have to get out there and really identify those locations. So I just want to make those comments to everybody that is proposing today.
No, yeah, I agree completely. That's all part of the process, and I think with a good set of plans and a solid CEI on board, and I think some of the CEI firms that you're looking at, we've worked with in the past, we're currently working with, and that's all part of the design and the bid, the award, the pre-construction conferences, and making sure the sequence of construction is sufficient enough so that when you get done, you're not out there, number one, patching your brand new roadway, and number two, tearing up your new roadway trying to pave some driveways and turnouts.
Commissioner Jones? I have a quick question. You mentioned that the existing road on Walton Bridge meanders outside of the right-of-way. Is it multiple instances that it gets outside the right-of-way?
Yes, sir. From our research, we took the aerial and pulled it up, and we brought in the property appraisers' right-of-way lines, and there are several locations where it moves in and out of the right-of-way. And working with the property owners and trying to stay exempt from the permit, and also fix the safety concerns with the horizontal alignment because they're very sharp curves. We researched the crash data. There's actually a crash. There was a fatality. A guy in a dump truck wound up rolling. He got partially ejected, but it was in one of those sharp curves. And that'll all be a part of the balance of, what can we do and make sure we spend all your dollars, but not more than all your dollars, and get you the final best product.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have Genesis Engineering. Gentlemen, good morning. State your name for the record, and please spell your last name.
My name is Nick Grosso, Grosso.
Doug Pritchard, Pritchard.
Floor is yours.
All right, thank you for having me here today. My name is Nick Grosso with Genesis Design. Infrastructure, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the facilities, the systems we use every day in our cities that drive our local economies. These are the utilities we use, the buildings we live and work in, and in this case, the roads we're utilizing on these projects. As a civil engineer, it's my job to help you identify those problems, how we take these improvements, and we make them a reality. I don't want to sit here and talk too much about cross slope and super elevation. So really what I want to focus on is how I've learned to adapt to the needs of my clients and provide you guys with the best design improvements that meets and hopefully exceed your expectations for the project. So both of these projects are going to follow the same basic design approach. We're going to first identify the problems, identify the concerns. How do we do that? We meet with you, we meet with your county staff, we go out, we do a site visit. Doug and myself, we've already done that. We've provided that to you. We've taken pictures, we've driven the jobs. We've identified design and CEI issues that we felt were very important on the project. So that's the first thing we want to do with your staff to get a better intimate knowledge, since these are the facilities you use and maintain every day. And then we're going to establish our design guidelines, our permitting regulations, how these projects are going to be permitted through the Water Management District. We feel they can qualify for exemptions. However, how many improvements are implemented are going to affect if those all fall under those guidelines. So those are what we'll have to identify first of all. And then budget. We know these are coming from a funding, a federal grant, so we have to be sure the design, the CEI, and the construction all fit within this funding budget. So we're going to identify a preliminary cost estimate based off of that initial site assessment so that we can clearly identify how that's going to fit. What do we do next? We engineer a solution. That's what I'm here for. That's what you're hiring me for, to engineer a good solution for the project. So we take all the information we gather from our site review, our phase one, data collection, our survey, our geotech, and we put those into a concept design, our preliminary phase one concept design. So we take our safety evaluations for guardrails, shoulders, clear zone violations, drainage evaluations for existing cross drains, driveway conditions. All these things are gathered early on in the process so that we can develop a concept. And we sit down, we review it, and we discuss that with you and your staff so that we can try to eliminate schedule creep later on down the project. So we want to make sure that it's a feasible, a buildable, affordable, and a safe design option so that we can move forward smoothly in the later phases for the 60%, the 90%, and the 100% design. And ultimately, we want to deliver a safe, affordable, buildable project. We understand that each phase submittal is going to have different design constraints, whether those be utilities, construction issues, cost. We always want to provide you an updated preliminary or an updated cost estimate for each one of these phase submittals so that we know we're still within the budget of the construction and within the budget of the funding. Other goals are public acceptance. Very, very important aspect on any transportation project is making sure that you and your county staff have enough information to provide to your residents on how these improvements are going to affect their normal traffic patterns. The MOT, the lane closures, access to their driveways, drainage improvements, all these things have to be handled during that process. And ultimately, we want to provide as much improvement as possible to fully utilize the grant. That's a very key thing. We have to be sure that we fully utilize the funding that you have available so that you can go back, get another fund, and we can do this all over again. So I want to have Doug talk a little bit about CEI, so I hope you give us an opportunity, and Doug's going to talk about CEI.
Good morning. I'd like to talk about understanding from the CEI perspective a little bit, and I'm talking about the construction scope, the county's goals, and the public's expectations. Now, Nick's talked a little bit about some of the construction. I do want to make it clear that we've walked this project from a CEI perspective so we can identify those challenges during construction. For instance, 181, we need to be aware of access. It's the main road to Morrison Springs, big recreational area. We know we've got a polling place on the project. We know we've got several churches out there. One of the things we identified during walking the project, there's an existing drainage line out there that cuts across the gentleman's front yard pretty significantly there at the corner of 181 and 181C. So we need to be sensitive to that during construction. We've walked the Walton Bridge job road, which is currently a dirt road. So for construction, we know we've got some pretty serious drainage and erosion potential issues that could damage what's being built out there. As far as the county's goals, our understanding comes from consistency. we're proposing the same team that's been working in Walton County the last 3 years. County Road 1087, County Road 2 Phase 3, and currently on County Road 183. That job is going to be finished up in the next few months, so we'll be available for these projects, and it's in the same geographical location as the jobs that we're talking about today. I think a goal for the engineering team is to put out a good set of plans. We understand the department's kind of thrown a curveball on how you intended to administer these contracts, but we think it's important as the CEI to be involved in the design phase, whoever the designer is. So we want to get involved early. That should help reduce change orders, but we know that if there are change orders, it's our responsibility to be your advocate. We need to negotiate the best terms for Walton County and give you a good comprehensive package that the board can be confident in approving. The public expectations, those kind of tie to your maintenance goals. We want to get with the maintenance folks early in the job so we can identify those hot spots where you've gotten public complaints or you've had to do some work, so we can be sensitive to those during construction. Our goal is to have the maintenance folks out within a couple months of final acceptance so they can review the project. So if there's anything the contractor's missed, we can get that addressed. Our goal should be, at the end of the job, the only maintenance that you have to do going forward is mowing the grass. Understanding the public's expectations, one step we take to do that is distribute a flyer before the job starts. It gives information about the project, timetables, and our contact information. So if they have any concerns or questions, they can call us directly. Understanding all this is going to get us better prepared to administer the job. We think it's important to be out there. We've learned from our past projects that things like driveway culverts, ornamental landscaping, school bus stops, garbage can staging areas, and especially mailboxes are sensitive to our customers out there. One step we take for mailboxes is, again, distributing a flyer before the change-out occurs so they're aware of what happens and they have our contact information if they have any concerns. We've identified a potential field office location at the intersection of State Road 81 and 181, and we'd like to set up our office right there to handle these construction projects. Ultimately, we know the most important thing is to have an inspector out there daily. He needs to be visible. He needs to be interacting with the customers out there. This, with our understanding of the issues on the project, is what makes sure that we deliver exceptional service. I want you guys to know these projects are important to our team. We genuinely want to continue giving services to Walton County. So with that, I appreciate your attention this morning, and I'll ask for your positive consideration of Genesis CEI services. Thank you. I'll answer any questions.
Yeah. Commissioner Chapman?
I don't have any questions, but Doug and Nick, I know I've been working and talking with you guys over the 183 project.
Yes, sir.
I just want to emphasize what I told the other two. Now, we are all aware, the rest of the board is probably not, of some of the issues we had on the northern section of the 183 project. That was not the contractor's fault. That was some work that was done previous to the contract being let that resulted in us having to do some cut it out and redo it. But these are two different roads that I would assume will be handled by the contractor, and both of them are, again, located in my district. So I think the two of you are pretty much aware of what I'm expecting in that regard, and staff for sure ought to be cognizant of the fact of how I feel about it. We know we got X number of dollars. We want to keep it within that budget, but I want the safest roads that we can put together out there for that money. I'm glad that somebody mentioned the drainage issue up there near the intersection. That, I understand, was put in by DOT back in the 50s or 60s. And why they run it across somebody's private property, I have no idea. But we want to dang well make sure we work with that gentleman, whomever the designer and firms are that's awarded this. But one thing I did mention, I think Sonny's your other inspector, isn't he? Yeah. When they were doing the work around Jasper Floyd 183.
Yes, sir.
I mentioned to the rest of them, I would prefer to have all that site work, turnouts, whatever, drainage, swells, be done prior to us putting that finished product asphalt cover, because as I've seen there at a couple of locations, we cracked off some new asphalt that had to be resawed and fixed because we were in there after the finished product was put down. So I don't know who coordinates all that or will coordinate all that, but we've got to keep that in mind because that's going back and doing a refix on something that shouldn't have had to go through it. But that's my comment.
Okay.
If I may, those lessons have been learned. We definitely want to bring those forward. I know one of the things that I mentioned in getting with the maintenance folks before the project starts and identifying those hot spots should alleviate the issue on 183 with the cross drains. We stopped and talked with the gentleman, the owner of the property with the drainage running across, so we've got some intimate knowledge, very agreeable.
And it was full of water when we were out there as well, so we got to see what it's like out there.
Commissioner Jones? Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Administrator Jones, I understand on the regular agenda we'll be getting a presentation by our staff. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have a recommendation based on our analysis of the presentations these firms have made, and that'll be on the regular agenda items.
Very good.
At the regular meeting.
Thank you. We will reconvene at 9 o'clock.
Day. We thank you for the spring weather. God, we're so grateful to have Commissioner Commander back to our commission family and team, and we just ask for continued strength. We just speak peace to our community. We thank you, Lord, that even, Lord, you give favor to the commissioners from the community, and that we work in unity and as one team. And Lord, we thank you as we go to Tallahassee. We're going to come back with money, and we thank you for favor as we meet with the legislators. And even as spring break is here, we ask that you for continued safety on 331 and even on the beaches, and safety for our first responders, because they put their lives in danger. And we ask for wisdom and guidance as we go forth with making important decisions today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I call this March 24th, 2015 board meeting to order. Thank you all very much for being here. I know we have at least one special guest, Mr. Gary Madison, the city clerk with Freeport in the audience. Welcome, Gary. Don't see anybody else I need to recognize right now, but I'd like to, before we get going, defer to Commissioner Commander.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Chairman. I do want to take this opportunity to thank staff for your support. The Lord, I guess I wasn't doing what he wanted me to do, so he took a hammer and knocked it upside my head and said, you going to listen to me? And he got my attention. I always believe in some tragedy or something of this nature, something good comes out. And I have been reminded, and I needed to be reminded, of how many good people there are in this county, how many good, loving, caring people. And most of all, that are our staff that work for us and these commissioners that sit beside me. I want to thank you for your prayers and your support. I'm not where I need to be, but I'm better than I was, and I just want to thank you for being there when I needed you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, the first thing we got to do is the additions and deletions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the consent agenda, we're asking you to add to approve a request from the Sheriff's Office to apply for the annual spring grant for 911 maintenance and the replacement of the Phoenix Springs Police Department 911 recorder, and then to add under the county attorney to approve a resolution making a legislative finding and authorizes the expenditure of tourist development tax revenues for the construction and maintenance of parking lots and spaces to provide more adequate parking for beach accesses in South Walton County. Those are the two additions. And approve the purchase under consent agenda. Approved to purchase 500 beach towels for $12,250 at the request of the TDC. Oops, didn't see that one.
Wishes of the board.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comment from the board? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, I need approval of the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Any public comments at this time? Seeing none, Mr. Jones?
Mr. Fletcher was raising his hand.
Mr. Fletcher, did you want to do it now, or do you want to do it during the presentation on? It's your choice.
That's fine.
Okay.
Approve the consent agenda.
Okay. We need to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Now, Mr. Jones. Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, our first item is a request for the board to approve a resolution honoring Mr. Alex Colby Brack. And I believe you have that resolution if you'd like to read it into the record.
Okay. This is Walton County Resolution 2015-16, whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Walton County, Florida, wish to honor the memory of Alex Colby Brack for his involvement in and contributions to the many county projects on which he participated during the 5 summers he worked in the Walton County Public Works Department. And whereas Alex Colby Brack earned the respect, regard, and friendship of the county staff, and whereas Alex Colby Brack's memory should be preserved and honored, and whereas Walton County has the ability to honor Alex Colby Brack and help keep his memory alive, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Walton County, Florida, desires to name a certain road in Walton County in memory of Alex Colby Brack, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Walton County feels it would be in the best interest of the citizens of Walton County, Florida, to name said road in honor of the memory of Alex Colby Brack. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Walton County, Florida, that the county road located on Montgomery Circle shall be known as Alex Brack Drive. And I get a motion, and we'll adopt this 24th day of March 2015.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Brack? We sincerely appreciate the efforts of your son and your brother, and the memory is going to last for a long time, and we certainly appreciate that he comes from a fine family and showed that tradition with his work with us. Thank you so very, very much.
Did you hear about the plane this morning?
Yeah.
You can always find somebody else worse off.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is we're requesting the board to approve the contract for the design of the South Walton Sports Park to Lowe's and Associates for the negotiated rate. That rate is 6.25% of the construction cost plus a $29,500 fee for the master planning. Our staff did a good job in negotiating this rate down from where they initially started, so we certainly recommend approval, and let's get this project moving.
Did Bulldog negotiate that rate?
Actually, I think Rick worked on that one, but Rick's been in training for some time.
So we have a Bulldog
Yeah.
Junior.
Yeah, we have Bull Pup.
Bull Pup, that's it. Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comments from the commission? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item, just to give you a little history, probably a month ago, morning prior to a board meeting, I got a call from Mr. Jack Huggins, who is the project manager for the Children's Advocacy Center and their construction project. He asked me if I could come by and look at the project, and told him, we were about to go into a board meeting, that I could get with him after a while and ask him if everything was okay. He said, well, yeah, but I have found the old hospital, which struck me as a little odd, so I asked him to explain that. As they were excavating their site, the debris from the old hospital that had previously been on site had been buried there. So we went out and looked at it, and we were able to assist them in removing that material. But we have a request before you today from Julie Hurst with the Children's Advocacy Center, and I'm sorry I can't say that word, but and the request is for 6,975 cubic yards of fill material to fill the hole that was left from where the excavation occurred to remove the debris from the old hospital. Certainly this wasn't anticipated when we conveyed that property to them for their use, and certainly they didn't anticipate it either. So it's, again, you have a letter from Ms. Hurst in your packet for that request, and so we ask for your direction.
Again, how many cubic yards?
6,975.
Okay. And what is the cost of that?
$3 to $4 a yard, depending on where we have it from. That will be hauled. That about right, Wilmer? $3 to $4 cubic yard.
I can't add unless I take off my shoes. How much money is that?
About 67,000.
20,000.
Less than 20.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further board comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and Ms. Hurst did say in her letter that we could work with them on timing to get it. So I'll get staff will get with them to work out a delivery arrangement. Okay. Next item is regarding the EOC, and if you've not been out there in the last few days, I encourage you to go by. We did the final walkthrough yesterday, so there's a few punch items left, a little cleanup, but the facility's looking very nice and going to be ready to go here in short order. We had about $6,800 worth of change orders, $6,851 on some things we asked them to do in addition to the project. So we're asking you to approve those change orders at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
We were recently received a letter and had a meeting with some folks from the Public Defender's Office regarding their office space, and some of them are here today if you have any questions. Basically, they're in a facility now that's county-owned facility, and by statute, we have to provide them with adequate space. The facility is not up to the standards that we probably should be providing to them for a number of reasons. So with your permission, we're going to begin looking at alternatives. We've actually looked at a couple things that may be ready to move forward in short order, but we want to get them finalized. But Mr. Murphy's here if you have any questions. Otherwise, we will begin that process. With your direction, we'll begin the process of looking at the most effective and efficient means of getting their space to where it needs, utilizing the space they're in for other purposes, and creating the additional space we need in order to make all that work.
What are the significant issues on the space?
Mainly, it's not ADA compliant. That component, they need to add staff, and there's no additional space for them to put their staff. There are some other minor issues. I say minor. There could be major issues, but maybe some old remediation needs to be done in the facility, and we've got some folks going over to look at some other things as well. But there's a number of issues with it. It's in the old bank building where we utilize a portion of that building for storage of records. What we will look to do is to convert all of that into storage, eliminate some rent we're having in some locations, and look at the most feasible way of getting enough space to take care of them and the county's needs as well.
So we're giving staff direction to move forward with this?
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah, we don't
Chapman.
need a motion, do we?
No, it's not a motion. Mr. Chapman's got a, go ahead. Mr. Chapman, you have the floor.
Okay, I understand the need over at the Public Defender's Office, but there's other needs throughout the county too. I'm hearing from the other constitutionals about their needing space too. So I'm just wondering, are we going to just fragment this thing and work directly on that, or are we going to try and encompass all of the needs and address them or look at them at one time.
We'll have a report on that in the next week or so on what those needs are. I think the state of the public defender's need is pressing, and we need to address that in the short term, and that's what we're going to look to do in a way that would somewhat dovetail into a bigger process over time.
If we move those records out, would that give them enough space? If we made our priority I know we're looking at moving records and putting them on electronically, so if we made that our priority, that building, would that help?
It would take some significant revenue to bring it where it needs to be. I mean, certainly, and we've looked at that previously, but we can certainly look at it again, but I think we're going to find that's probably not the most feasible option.
Okay.
How much space do they need? Do you know?
About 6,000 feet?
Yes, roughly between 6,000 to 8,000
Okay,
square feet.
okay.
6,000 to 8,000 square feet, okay. Just curious, okay.
How much you got now, Tom?
4,000 square feet. And again, I think our biggest concern is the ADA compatibility issue. We have clients that come in that are disabled. They're not able to use our facilities in the building.
Okay, but you're not asking for 6,000 in addition to 4,000 for 10,000. You're needing a total of 6.
Well, and as the county has grown, we have grown as well.
Right.
We're busting at the seams over there, as you well know. And that is one issue in itself, but the other is the ADA issue, the liability that attaches to that for the county. That's one of our big concerns. We don't want to see that happen. We have dodged that bullet a couple of times here recently. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up to us.
Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry, I missed the answer to the question. Is the total is 6,000, or are you adding 6,000?
No, sir. We currently have 4,000 square feet.
And you
we
want to-
need 6,000 to 8,000 square feet.
Total?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have a consensus to staff, we give direction to staff to bring back proposals at the next board meeting?
Okay,
So directed.
we can do that. Next item is a request regarding the landfill and the fees we charge for scrap tires. We currently charge $86 a ton. Our provider is increasing that rate to $100 a ton. We would recommend that we charge $110 a ton to cover the cost of them picking them up and our administrative costs for taking care of it. So our recommendation is we increase the rate for scrap tires at landfill from $86 to $110 a ton.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. Comments from the board? Seeing none. Comments from the public? Have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item, Commissioners, is a compliance issue with our permits at the landfill. To remain in compliance with operating permit for the landfill requires quarterly monitoring and reporting for concentrations of combustible gases, and at points then be reported to the DEP. The first quarterly monitoring report for this year reported high levels of those gases were detected at several monitoring points. In order to address these high concentrations, we need a remediation plan. By our permit and by statute, we're required to address this within 7 days of detection, which was late last week. We have 60 days to move forward with a compliance plan. So our request is that we issue a task work order to Preble Rish in the amount of $31,054.09 to move this process forward so we can move back into compliance with our state permits.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, you have before you a Walton County Fire Rescue Employer Safety Program and Respiratory Protection Plan for your consideration. We're requesting that you would adopt that on their behalf.
I'd like to comment that was very well done. They put a lot of time and effort and work. I want to commend, Bobby Martin and his staff for the work they did, and I motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, next item is regarding the change order number 2 to contract 014028 for JP Construction, doing business as Jameson Construction, the wastewater treatment facility in Mossy Head. This is a deduct change order for $186,350.08. And just to be clear, it's not a cost, it's not a savings of that. That's for materials that the county has purchased in order to save on the sales tax. So those items were initially in the contractor's contract for him to purchase, but by the county doing the direct purchase and recouping the sales tax, we need to reduce his contract by an equal amount. And I hope that made sense.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item, Commissioners, regarding board direction, pardon me, for paving the road crossing Leisure Lake Dam and whether to place it on a future paving list or not. There's been a significant history with this road in the fact that there was an unpaved road crossing the dam. The dam failed, had to be taken out. The homeowners in that along the lake went to great expense to rebuild the dam. And while the county has an easement in that area to place a road, it's the question before us and before the board is whether we want to consider paving that road in the future. Our recommendation is that we not consider that. We have paved roads over dams around the county, and they're problems. They're problems from a maintenance standpoint. They're problems from a liability standpoint. And I think specifically here, but in general, it would be a good policy of this board to be very careful before we place, a paved road on any structure that we don't have complete ownership or control over, especially when there's a potential of great expense and liability from damage it may cause. And again, I know there's folks here that would like to speak to that, but that is our position. Our recommendation would be that we not consider placing it on any future list for paving.
Before we take public comment, I'll need comments from the commission and a motion if which to go.
I'd like to hear from council in regards to the liability issue.
The problem becomes we don't control or own or have or not the permit holder for the dam, so we don't have any control of the understructure for the road. And we've come across this on other paved roads across dams where they either wash and then we can't do anything to fix the road, or we end up being on the hook, not necessarily legally, but just because we have to rebuild the dam to put the road back. So it becomes a liability issue in terms of expense if that happens. We've had it happen in the past in a number of instances where even though we don't own the dam or have any maintenance responsibility for the dam, in an emergency we might be on the hook to replace the dam to put the road back in, and that's a significant liability.
Is that a similar situation that's taking place right now at Teelanville?
It's similar. The road hasn't failed there. The dam has failed. In that case, we're actually the permit holder for the dam. So it's a similar but different situation, yes, sir.
And when water management gets involved, you're talking the price is jacked up tenfold, because they require things that.
Although I will say it looks like that through a bunch of efforts from Public Works, we may have found a less expensive way to fix that problem.
The one in Teelanville.
At Teelanville.
I'm sorry, in Teelanville, yes, sir.
Okay. We have a request by staff to not reopen or repave the road over the dam. What's the wishes of the board?
How do you say that? I make a motion to support staff.
Okay.
Is that?
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other commissioner comments? Public comments on the Leisure Lake. Please come forward. Mr. Riley, although I know the spelling of your last name for the record, please spell your last name for the clerk.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Harry Riley, R-I-L-E-Y. I have copies of my comments which will be offered on behalf of the Leisure Lake Landowners Association. May I pass them?
Start with the clerk.
Leisure Lake Dam Mound, which previously supported Leisure Lake Road, is a private property with Walton County granted right-of-way or easement by subdivision developers across the dam mound explicitly for validated needed public transportation. Leisure Lake Dam was built as a barrier to hold water, creating a private lake for Leisure Lake subdivision in the 70s. The mound ruptured in September 2009. W.C. Henry, who was the Walton County Legal Counsel, stated in October 2009 a road across Leisure Lake Dam was not required. Mr. Henry also stated no public funds were authorized to repair a private structure, that association was likely limited to an MSBU action as the only way to secure a means to repair the dam mound. Repair, construction, and associated costs in excess of $90,000 was borne by Leisure Lake subdivision, the 36 lots. Several lot owners are still paying their share of the mound construction costs through the MSBU process. More on that later.
Well, Mr. Riley, your comments there that you're reading are now already a matter of record for the county. Can you synopsize what your position is? Are you for it, against it? What's your position, and who do you represent?
Representing the Leisure Lake Landowners Association Incorporated, and basically our position is, to cut to the chase, if I can get to it here. The conclusion is that many of the variables that actually were relevant and may have supported road across Leisure Lake Dam in 2009 and earlier are no longer valid. Major issue of fire protection and medical support timeliness is moot, as is ingress and egress. There is no known substantive evidence that justifies a requirement or huge expenditure of public funds to open the road. In fact, many surrounding citizens, and perhaps much of Walton County, if they had the facts, would conclude funds are more wisely spent in paving clay roads and other county projects. The lot owners of 36 Leisure Lake Landowners Association properties offers the following position. Based on legal guidance in 2009, which we believe is still valid, quote, keeping the road intact is not a public necessity, unquote, from Mr. Henry. Public Works assessment regarding loss of dam, quote, there will be almost no impact outside the area of the subdivision, unquote. There is no known current objective verified requirement. Obvious expected huge financial cost. Many higher priority needs may be in jeopardy or unfulfilled. And not to mention that Corps of Engineers, EPA, DEP, and others will get involved, interrupting the environment that has finally settled down in this area. So reopening the Leisure Lake Road across Leisure Lake Dam is opposed. At an absolute minimum, the issue should be tabled and study group commissioned to research the issue and document a factually valid requirement if there is one. The reopening and paving the road across Leisure Lake Dam should not be supported by the Walton County Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment? Come forward. Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Good morning. I'm John Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y, and I'd like to say that I agree with the comments that Harry Riley just made, and that all the members of Leisure Lake Landowner Association are opposed to reopening that road on that portion of the dam.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to accept staff's recommendation not to open and pave a road across the dam. All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. There will not be a road put across the dam. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next item is regarding the purchase of a lowboy truck cab and chassis to the lowest responsible bidder, which was Empire Truck Sales, for the amount of $131,536. This is a budgeted item, and we request your approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is regard to contract 014005 for gasoline and diesel fuel supply services. Our current contract is with Retiff Oil, Retiff and Oil LLC. If you recall, last year we went out for bids, and actually Retiff was the second lowest responsive bidder, and we awarded the contract, which was a miserable failure. So this contract has the option to renew for 2 additional years, and this is the first renewal of it. We've been pleased with their service and feel they take care of us and our needs there, so we would recommend that we extend it by 1 year at this point.
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further commissioner comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, next item is regarding the process of amending the stormwater management section of the Land Development Code as outlined in the material that was provided to you. We had some discussion of this at a previous board meeting, and this is a amended draft that we're presenting to you. If you're satisfied with that draft or satisfied to the point we can move it to public hearing, we would request that we begin the process of amending the Land Development Code to incorporate the comments that are provided to you.
I thought at the last meeting we talked about the fact that there are some areas north of the bay that should be considered because the emergency management has previously reported that the lowest point in the county is above the bay.
Yes, sir.
So I know that it starts out with the exemption being north of the bay. And so is that sustainable?
We think it is, but if there's areas or entirety of the north of the bay or some mechanism that includes parts of that, we would certainly entertain it.
Well, previously, I've talked with Mr. Sunday about some of the areas that were in the draft of the emergency management report that talked about these areas. I would ask that at least on this particular item in this issue, to go forward, to get with public works staff and find out would there be any any stormwater impact to those areas for residential construction.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't have a problem, but I'd like to get a follow-up on that.
Okay.
Well, our roads are affected. I mean, we know for sure.
Commissioner Meadows.
I have a question. Now, there were two policies. Is it, there's the minimum.
Yeah, one is very short. It says it'll be 12 inches above the crown of the road.
So are we voting on both of these to come forward?
No, we're just, both of them to move forward, correct?
Both of them to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've got two. We've got one that's stormwater management other, and then we have one that's finished floor elevation. So both of them moved.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay. The only thing I did was Public Works came to me and they had like 1 through 6 is why they support exemption for lots north of the bay. I guess you saw that, didn't you, Commissioner? Yeah. Anyway, I'm ready to vote either way, depending on, if you want it north of the bay. I think for future development, I think it might be a good idea. It's up to
And I think that because the emergency management people had previously put together a report indicating that it could be a problem area, I'd like to at least see that flushed out in this.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps it should be, but I'd like to see that made part of the information package that we get to decide. But I have no problem with moving it forward with the understanding that they'll do some efforts
Sure.
to
Yeah,
bring
I
that
agree.
together in detail.
When we build roads, do we go by this or do we go by some other stormwater requirements, or is it DEP really?
I think it's probably mostly DEP. If we construct a road, we use their guidelines and they tell us the things we need to do.
I think this is just
Maybe
pretty
Greg
much
can answer
private.
that.
Yeah, pretty
It's
much private.
going to be directed
development.
toward buildings
Yeah.
and residential dwellings on single-family lots.
Greg Graham for the record, Public Works.
Spell your last name.
Sir?
Spell your last name.
Graham. Anyways, if it's a new road, typically we would go and follow our own standard in addition to all the other state and federal requirements. For our dirt roads, there's a certain exemption, and we typically don't necessarily look at following our own standard unless it's in an impacted area that we feel like there might be some problems, and then we would basically just address the downstream attenuation issues regardless of what the standard is.
So you're saying in the north there's already some standards anyway. I was looking at number 6. It says that there's an economic cost associated with implementation of stormwater management. So I don't really see it as a need now. I kind of feel like if we need it in the future, we could always come back. I'm, of course, for less regulations and less cost on our taxpayers if we can, unless we just really need it. I mean, it's like development's not real fast up here right now.
And I see your point, but as a homeowner, if I built a house and put it to an elevation where we know it's not going to flood, if I don't and it floods, then think of the expense that I'll have, because I have a prime example along the river. Of course, a lot of those houses have been bought out, but my past in-laws lived, as you well know, on the river. I can't tell you the many times that house flooded, and we moved furniture up. I mean, they had hooks in their house, but still, floors were damaged. I mean, every time, everything had to be repaired. So in the grand scheme of things, to me, it's better to spend some money on the front end to protect your house from flooding than to have to clean it up when it does flood, If we do have any, I agree with Bill, if we do have any areas, I would just like to know. I mean, I know at Choctaw we have a problem with some areas around Choctaw and Villatassa.
And Commissioner Jones has a valid point, but I think that I just want to see the information brought together so that we can make an informed decision on at least that aspect of it.
We'd be glad to do that.
And just to the thought process behind it, Commissioners, was we heard you at the last meeting to look at north of the bay, and so that's why we identified all the reasons we felt at this time that it was. We had not seen in the April storm event, we had 2 areas that were north of the bay and some of the low-lying areas that Commissioner Enfield is talking about, and those are actually identified on our list of initial county problem areas that are looking at solutions for those particular areas. Out of the large number of areas we identified, there was only 2 north of the bay, and we are actually evaluating and looking at alternatives to address those. There is a pretty significant economic cost. Typically, our affordable housing is north of the bay. We didn't think at this particular time that we'd been seeing the drainage problems. Any new development is going to have to basically have a stormwater management plan. So that was just our reasons for eliminating it north of the bay. I understand, there's not trying to get into a north-south of the bay thing. It was just, that was the engineering logic behind
And we hear your recommendation. We'll be glad to get that information and cover it a little more thoroughly with you.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this? Yes, sir. Come on forward.
My name is Richard Flowers. I live off East
Say your
West.
last name, please.
Richard, Flowers. I live off Joe Duggar Road, the east-west part of Joe Duggar Road right now, and we have a pretty significant problem out there right now. Just this past rain the other day, we have been washed out in 3 different places on that road. We have a lady, 2 people in there that's pregnant. One of them's 8 months old, 8 months pregnant. Other one's 6 months pregnant. And I really don't think that an emergency services could get to her if they had to. And so I'm hearing in response of everybody that we live up and down that road, and we got a pretty serious problem out there right now.
And Commissioners, if I may just remind you, Mr. Flowers was here maybe the last meeting, that is a private road. It's not maintained by the county. We have gone out and looked at it, and if Mr. Flowers gives us opportunity after the meeting, we'll have a little short discussion with him how we think we might can get there. But absent some direction from the board, we'll try to work with Mr. Flowers to see if there's some remedy. But again, it is not a county-maintained road, and it is private. And Mr. Davis can provide you whatever details you may need to know further on that. But we just so you know, we have been out and looked at it and made an assessment of what could be done.
Right. And I believe Bobby went out, and he said we had a conversation. He did say it was a safety issue. So I don't know if we want Bobby to speak to it
briefly, or?
I have a picture right here, if I could gladly.
We're
pass
dealing,
it around.
it's
I know,
housing
we're
here, not the
kinda
roads right now.
off task, I
We're
understand.
dealing on the housing thing right now, so let's stick with the topic.
Okay, we'll
Thank you, sir.
talk. We'll talk about it after the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other public comment? Okay. We have a motion to move this forward in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. You're up.
Thank you. Was negotiating. Commissioners, earlier in the meeting, you had presentations from three engineering firms regarding 181C and Walton Bridge Road. Each of these projects have two components, the design component and the CEI component. We have been advised by the DOT that we can't award both parts of the same project to the same firm. So staff had gone to great lengths to review their submittals and is prepared to make the following recommendation. And if you wish to go with that, that would be certainly your prerogative, or if you wish to do so based on your discussions earlier. But based on our rankings, the top-ranked firm for each project was, we recommend awarding the design, and the second-ranked firm for each project, we suggest awarding the CEI. So to that end, DRMP was the top-rated firm on 181C, so we would recommend that you award the design of that project to them. Genesis was the second-rated firm, and we would on 181C, and we would recommend you award the CEI services to Genesis. On Walton Bridge Road, Genesis was the top-rated firm, so we would recommend awarding the design services to them. And Atkins was the second-rated firm, and we would recommend that you award the CEI to Atkins on Walton Bridge Road. And I think I got all that right. But those would be four separate actions, and that would be our recommendation.
Okay. Well,
Let me disclaim, first of all, that I won't be voting on either of these because I filed a conflict of interest.
okay.
And I do have to ask Mark a question. I was not able to attend the 8 o'clock meeting this morning. Can I vote on this, or should I abstain?
No, you can vote if, as long as you feel like you have a sufficient basis to make a decision.
I've looked at all their proposals, so.
Okay, if we got to do it one at a time.
So the first recommendation is that you, and let me back up, these are requests for qualifications, so this would be directing staff to negotiate with each of these firms for a contract. So the first recommendation would be to negotiate with DRMP for the 181 design project.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further commission comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Next recommendation would be to negotiate with Genesis on the 181C CEI services.
That's so moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other commission comments? Any public comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next would be to negotiate with Genesis for the Walton Bridge Road design services.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other commission comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next recommendation would be to negotiate with Atkins for Walton Bridge Road CEI.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Commission comments? Public comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Jones?
No, sir.
Mr. Bagby?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. The first item we have on the agenda is a request that the board approve the chairman to sign a letter to the Florida Department of Transportation requesting a deferred reimbursement agreement with the state for funding of the Western Lake Pedestrian Bridge in the amount of about $1,049,106. It's currently scheduled in FDOT's plan in FY 18-19, and our recommendation is that we take the money out of the TDC reserves to go ahead and accomplish this task as long as FDOT agrees to reimburse us, at least by FY 18-19.
Yeah, I agree with that because we were kind of promised that it was going to be, PDQ, but we really don't want to wait that long. We've already waited, I think, 2 years. So.
As long as we got an agreement with DOT, they will reimburse us after we've constructed it.
Yes, sir.
Motion, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
A second item is to request approval to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with Topsail Hill State Park for parking in a value not to exceed $25,000, based on the board's previous direction to search out parking in South Walton for beach access. We've met with the Topsail Hill State Park folks. They have an overflow parking lot of about 100 to 120 spots. What we would do is from the Friday before Memorial Day through Labor Day, do a test to see, just open it up, first come, first serve for that parking for tourists, for anybody really, to come in and relieve some pressure on some of the beach accesses that we have in that area. One of the things the park folks have agreed that they would more frequently run the tram. Right now it only runs once an hour. They said they would run it at least twice an hour, if not more frequently, and that there would be some accountability and that they would charge us either weekly or monthly based on whatever our desires are. So we'd like to negotiate this and bring it back for your approval.
How would you let the public know that this would be available?
Well, this would be the first forum. Once you approve the MOU, that would be the second forum. Then we would put it out in our connections to our bed tax collectors to let them know, to inform their renters that that wasn't available. Would imagine either the TV shows or the newspaper would also pick up on it if and when it was approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Let's put it on your website and the county website
So is this,
as well.
I have a question. So is this for people that are going to Topsail Hill, that we're going to pay for their parking and their tram ride, or is this for?
Yes, ma'am. This would basically open up that overflow parking. We would get a 120-space parking lot down by the beach. The fact that it's in Topsail Hill State Park probably benefits the park because it's an underutilized parking space. But it
How are
also
people going to get from that parking lot to the beach?
they have a
park
tram
there?
system in there that runs every hour.
Well, I know that, to that beach, but if we're parking people to go, are we parking people only to go to Topsail Beach? Or are we parking people, we're parking people only to go to Topsail Beach?
Yes, ma'am. Well, that
Only
would be
to
the
use the
easiest way.
tram.
I guess they could park there and walk down.
So I guess the purpose, I'm trying to determine what the purpose of this is. The purpose is to open up more parking at Topsail Hill for the people going to Topsail Hill?
It's to open up more parking in South Walton, the direction, and we're looking at a couple of other options, but this is 120 parking spaces that we don't have to go buy land and build a parking lot. Or
And I agree with that, but if you're not going to Topsail Hill, if you're going somewhere else, it's a heck of a long way to park to get to the beach. So and people say the Topsail Hill State parking lot is never full anyway. So if it's for only people going to Topsail and we're going to pay their parking fees and their tram ride fees, I think that's a good idea. But just to open up the parking lot for people to park, I'm not sure how they're going to get from there to the beach.
Mr. Begbie?
Anywhere else.
If I recall correctly, you were directed by the board to find a variety of ways to help improve parking. And this is not the only one?
No,
This is
no,
one
sir,
of
Mr.
several,
Chairman.
but
This is one, hopefully one of three that we will bring to you before summer. But to answer Commissioner Meadows' question, yes, ma'am, it is for people parking at Topsail to utilize the 3 miles or the expansive beach that is at Topsail. guess they could park there and walk down 30A to another, but that's not the intent of this.
They're not going to do that. So are we going to pay for the tram?
There is no charge
There's
for
no
the tram.
charge. It's just for the parking.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're going to pay for the parking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then you're going to do some kind of promotional to encourage people to go to Topsail. That way it would take traffic from the other beaches.
Yes, ma'am.
I got you.
I would also like to, when you do this, I would like to have some metrics on this
Yes,
for
ma'am.
next year, so that we can decide if it worked or if more people are actually going there. That's what I'd like to see is some metrics on it.
Yes, ma'am. We'll bring back the amount that we've paid on a weekly basis for that service. One of the things they have I believe it's a Thursday night concert series. One of the things we're not planning on doing is paying for people to park there to
Right.
go to the concert series. This is for people for beach access in accordance with the direction that we receive from the board.
Right, exactly. And so if we could get an count on how if this is successful,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
would be.
We'll give you that information.
Okay, thanks.
And could I add, Mr. Bagby, I think this needs to be, I'll use the word marketed.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to let people know that that stretch of beach is beautiful. It's available. There are bathroom facilities there, which, anybody who has kids knows that's a necessity. That it is a wonderful place to go, and there again, we could alleviate some of the pressure off the other areas, but it's going to have to be. We just can't, put it on one or two sites and expect people to know it. You're really, I even would think of using one of those signs that Public Works uses, saying, free parking and beach access at Topsail or something like that. I mean, let's get the word out, and I think it's going to take more. To me, it'll take more than 1 year to do it, but I think we need to start and say this is the first, the first step. So.
Well, and Topsail has already put out a public beach access sign. So in anticipation that this would, one of those little brown signs or whatever, we will have signage. We will try to promote this. My guess is it will be wildly successful, and we'll have to figure out how to solve that problem, or people just are not in the habit or don't want to do the tram thing. And so it's a pilot project, and we'll see if we can convince people that the tram ride is not as bad as they think.
At least for the first year, it's less expensive than buying land.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the wishes of the board? Have a motion?
And a second.
And motion and a second. Any further discussion by the commission? Any public comments? Yes, ma'am, come up.
My name's Mary Nielsen, Nielson. I hold a approximately $64 state park pass for use in the state parks in the state of Florida. And it provides me primarily local usage to go to Topsail, to the beach. That is for only one person in my car. If I bring a friend with me, I have to pay an additional fee for the friend or friends in my vehicle for each time I go there and park. The family rate for a car with like 5 or 6 people, I don't know, whatever a car holds, is $120 a year. So I just did $25,000 by 120 parking spaces, and that came out to about $208 to $209 per parking space for the time period that you're looking at. And then I did approximately 90 days in that time period, okay? And I divided that into the 210 and just say it's like $3, $4, okay? So for $4, all these cars can pour into Topsail with 5 or 6 people for $4, okay? There's some kind of a disconnect here, folks, for all the citizens of the state of Florida who are paying their annual fees, and or those citizens who choose not to pay an annual fee but pay a day pass. So there's a big disconnect here. You're utilizing a park that I have supported to be utilized in the past, standing right before you many, many times. as Deer Lake, and Deer Lake's going to have some improvements, et cetera. And they're going to get a bathroom, and they're going to get some more parking and this and that. So it could be spread out. But I think financially, this little deal here is a little too good for you all. And it's not very good for the state, and it's not very good as a comparable for the actual people who support the state parks and buy the passes or pay the fees for the day passes. I'm not sure the math here is right, and I don't think it's fair. And you can look at that two different ways. I think that there should be a better benefit for the state park system financially, with the amount of money that you're all generating in bed taxes from these people and the volume of the people who could, in fact, come to this park. I really would like you to look at the money and look at the rates and look at how people are charged and look at the big picture for the time period involved. Because either the homeowners who are registered bed tax collectors should be buying the $120 passes, okay? And if somebody steals them, they steal them, but that's their problem. There should be an accountability, or you should be paying the state more money. There's got to be a better mathematical and numerical way of dealing with this money. And the fact that you have citizens from all over the state of Florida who are buying these passes. And I don't think this little encouragement to expand and spread out into the state park system shouldn't be done at this financial level. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Ms. Nielsen, what figure do you have in mind?
Well, I don't, because I just heard these numbers this second. I'd like to.
Sounds like you want more money for the state park system.
You betcha.
Did the state, have you negotiated this with the park?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't want to get into the 10-month history since we got the direction, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. We met with Jason about 10 months ago and began these negotiations once we got the direction from the Board of County Commissioners. We had initially asked for a fixed rate price because our concern is this could get out of control real quick. And maybe I wasn't clear. This is not a fixed rate negotiation. This is a not to exceed price. We will be charged $6 for each car that goes in with 4 or 5 people every time they go in between the Friday before Memorial Day and Labor Day. And that's why I said one of our concerns is it could be wildly successful, and we could hit the $25,000 mark by July 4th and be back here before you in the second week of June, either asking for guidance and either more money or further direction. What we did is the state park, when Jason took it up to his superiors in Tallahassee, they balked at the fixed rate. The fixed rate that we initially offered was $25,000, based on the fact that they made somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 last year for that overflow parking for the whole year. So we said for this 90 days, we'll double that, and we just have first come, first serve, unlimited parking. They balked at that. They countered with, we want to do the daily rate. There's a rate for cars with 4 or 5 folks. There's a rate for people that walk in. There's a rate for people that bike in. And we will be charged accordingly if they are there using the daily, not the camper sites, but the daily parking spot or the overflow parking spot. In the sense of needing to get this done before the season, we said, okay, let us take it back to the Board of County Commissioners and make this recommendation that we get funding not to exceed $25,000 for this first year for this pilot project. And then what we'll do is we'll do some metrics. We'll come back. We'll inform the Board of County Commissioners it was successful, it wasn't successful, we marketed it to the wrong people, or we didn't have big enough signage or whatever. But the only reason we limited 25,000 is I'm not a fan, and I don't believe the Board of County Commissioners is a fan of unlimited expenditures on a pilot project. And so that's why we're making the recommendation we're making.
Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next item is to request award and approve construction contract with P2M General Contractor Services for the repainting of the Visitor Center building.
Are you going to paint it the same color?
We are not planning on painting it the same color. We are meeting with planning to paint it in the new colors, which actually the gold looks not, or yellow, whatever, looks nice around the trim of the doors, but it is basically going to be the same. The shutters will be dark. The trim, instead of the gold that's there now, will be this yellow, if we can get that approved through planning.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Our next item, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, is to request award and approve a contract with Sowall Graphics for the TDC beach access and Dew Lake signage refitting. We have something like 240 signs, those arch signs. Some of them are small, some of them are big, and of course they all have the old logo on them. And so about half of them are peeling and just need to be refurbished anyway. And so we have a bid $55,314.24, and we'd like approval to redo all those signs.
It's the board's wishes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Jim, now those signs, like you said, are peeling. Now they need to take some measures to make sure we can limit the amount of fluff off on those things. So is that part of their contract, is to do what they need to do in preparation of that sign prior to putting the final paint on it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chapman. They're going to peel off the old ones and finish, and then they're not just going to slap new on the peeling stuff.
They're going to sandblast in?
I don't know that it's sandblasting. It should involve sandblasting, but this is a new applique that's going on, so they will have to take the old applique off.
Any other comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just a few updates, Commissioners. Just to remind everybody, Silver Airways direct flights to Tampa and Orlando started from Beaches International last Thursday and are going gangbusters. And I expect to be using it to go to a meeting, and I imagine a lot of folks in this county and other counties will be also. The Orlando flight carries on, I believe, to Fort Lauderdale. So if you have meetings or conferences in the south end of the state, that's probably the most cost-efficient way to go. Our own Jennifer Vigil was elected chair a couple of weeks ago to the American Public Works Association Emerald Coast chapter. Just want to let you know we're very proud of her. We've received 2 reimbursement checks from the state, one for $33,961 that we got from yesterday for the cost share of beach nourishment, the previous project, the monitoring services, and then we got informed, I believe, yesterday also that we got $3,800 and $3,825 reimbursement from a contract that was overpaid about 2 years, a little over 2 years ago. So we've actually got money besides sped tax money. Those monies will go into the reserves, just in case that question comes up. Are there any, subject to your questions, Commissioners?
Would you update us, please, on the Angelos property?
We will. I met with, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I met with Anita Page and Jackie Markell, and there was a previous plan that we were not aware of that had almost like a little nature center there. So we are we got a drawing of that. We don't actually have any plans, and we can't find any plans. We're looking at 3 options to bring back to you for your consideration. If you remember, the direction was bring back some options with some cost estimate, and then you would make the determination based on the appraisals that Mr. Jones got on whether or not to purchase the property and improve the property. The three versions we're looking at is just very limited parking, basically on the east side, a more detailed parking plan, which the condominium was on about the northern third of that parcel, so we would take up the entire northern third of the parcel with parking where that condominium footprint was, and then the third plan would be the nature center that was considered years ago. I don't remember when. Some of y'all might probably remember, but we hope to have that back to you by the first meeting in May, but it may be the first meeting in June. We definitely want it considered and discussed at one of the meetings in the south end.
Okay. And in conjunction with our county attorney, do I understand at the next board meeting, we're going to have the, for better term, beach renourishment letter ready?
Yes, sir. It's ready to go.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item I have on the agenda is a request to approve a contract with Dr. Harvey H. Harper III, a professional engineer for engineering services as it relates to Driftwood. As you may recall, this is the contract with the engineer requested by the special magistrate in the Driftwood matter.
Okay. Mr. Davis, both the first and third items under yours pertain to Driftwood, which is part of the Sandestin DRI. So I'm going to recuse myself, and I'm going to pass the gavel on down to Mr. Chapman because I believe that there's a conflict with Commissioner Commander as well.
Okay.
You're doing this too often, Bill. My time was last
done.
year. I thought I was done.
I thought you were done. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things I think is missing in here is on page 9 of 11 of the scope of services.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like for this gentleman, Dr. Harper, to not only meet with county representatives, but to also meet with people who live there, some of their representatives, whoever that they choose that to be, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, as part of number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
In other words, to meeting with representatives of the county and representatives of the neighborhood group.
Yes, ma'am. I can add that. Mr. Harper's already approved the contract, but I have no doubt he won't have any problems with that addition.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to add that if that's okay.
No problem. Dr. Harvey, I'm sorry. I said
Dr. Harper, yeah. Okay. Otherwise,
Any other comments, board? Any public comment? Seeing none, what's the board's wishes?
motion to approve with that addition.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, I will skip to number 3 since the 2 commissioners are recused on that item as well. It's a request to approve a cost-sharing agreement between Walton County, the Greater Driftwood Estates Homeowners Association, the Driftwood Estates Phase 2 Homeowners Association regarding the construction and maintenance of certain improvements to Driftwood Park.
Yeah, and this is in Sarah's district, but we're going to kind of use a lot of different funds from different areas. And Driftwood Estates Homeowners Association, like they did before, is going to contribute, I forget what amount it is, but to the cost and construction of those improvements. And so it will be open to the public, so it'll be really some added facilities there.
Essentially, Commissioners, they're going to contribute to the purchase of the material. We're going to contribute to the installation of the material.
Okay.
What it boils down to.
What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any public comment? Seeing none, have a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Davis? Yeah. I guess we can get the rest of them back in here.
Yes, sir.
Y'all come on. Here you go.
We did both items.
Yes, we did. You got the con.
Thank you. Mr.
Wrong
Davis.
number 2.
You did 1 and 3, right?
1 and 3 is done, yes.
The next item is item number 2, is a request to authorize the chairman to sign a quitclaim deed to an individual named Ron Garrett. The request is also that the board make a finding that the parcel being conveyed is valued at less than $15,000, and due to its size, shape, location, and value, it is only of use to the adjacent property owner. As there's a memo in the file or in the packet, essentially this piece of property is a small 2-acre parcel that sits in the middle of another parcel. It was deeded to Walton County for the purposes of a borrow pit many, many years ago, and we no longer use it for that, and its only use would be for the surrounding owner, who is one person, Mr. Garrett, and under Florida Statute 125.352, if you find the value is less than $15,000, interestingly enough, as determined by the property appraiser, and when due to the size, shape, and location and the value of the property, the board determines that the parcel is of use only to one or more adjacent property owners, the board may effect a private sale or gift of the property. So that's what we're asking you to do, to authorize the chairman to sign that deed and to make those findings.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other commissioner comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, the next item is item number 4. It's a request to authorize the chairman to sign a settlement agreement for damages caused by Mr. Harold Gilley to the Miramar Regional Beach Access Parking Deck. As you may recall, it was a crash into the deck. It cost approximately, and I'm rounding numbers, $10,900 to repair, and we are asking for you to approve a settlement agreement for that amount to us.
And that's to go into the TDC?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Listen to me. Yes, sir.
So moved.
I've just promoted you to judge.
Thank you.
But he's going to be the chairman.
So moved.
We have a motion in a couple seconds. Any other commissioner comment? Any public comment? Mr. Begbie, did that 10.9 cover the cost of repairs?
Thank you. $10 million.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next 2 items are requests to hold public hearings on April 14th to consider an ordinance creating first the 331 tax increment area, and that's number 5. Commissioners, the ordinance that was produced to you, I've had a couple of questions about the base year and the percentage of the increase in the taxes that would be applied to the TIF fund. Actually, those are choices you can make. We've sent you, I hope, one for both, one which has a 2015 base year and one which has a 2014 base year, but that's the decision you can make between now and the public hearing. If you choose a 2014 base year, there'll have to be some recalculation of this year's budget based on the increase in 2014. And talking to Mr. Stewart and actually doing a little math, it's not going to be a tremendous amount of money if you choose to go backwards to 2014, but that's just a choice. And again,
We need to know how much.
Yeah, and we'll have that calculation done before the public hearing.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay,
And I'll send it to you.
okay.
But we're just requesting now to set the public hearing on April 14th.
So moved.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Any other commissioner comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
And the next one, Commissioners, number 6, is a request to hold a public hearing on April 14th to consider an ordinance creating the South Walton tax increment area.
And I guess the same would apply.
It
Same
is,
as-
yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve, to
Second.
move it forward.
We have a motion and a second. Any commissioner comment? Public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Commissioners, as you're aware, you've approved the sale of certain real property in the Mossy Head Industrial Park, the Busby property, we referred to it, for the eventual construction of a commercial storage and delivery facility for dry goods for 1.5 acres. We just have to have you adopt a resolution saying that's the highest and best use for that property.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner comment? Public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And Commissioners, my add-on, and sorry for the late addition, but we have drafted a resolution which makes a legislative finding and authorizing the expenditure of tourist development tax revenues for the construction and maintenance of parking lots and spaces for the purpose of providing more adequate parking for beach accesses in South Walton County. And the resolution just finds that that is related to tourism, that the use of those funds is related to tourism, will be advertised as such.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion is second. Commissioner comments? Public comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, if I could, I'd like to make a quick update regarding public records, if that's okay with the chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
As you all are aware, I'm sure there was an article in the Daily News regarding a test that was done by the Associated Press where they sent a public record request to various public entities. They sent one to Walton County Administration. Mr. Jones did exactly what we have trained him to do, and he sent that to a mailbox in our office. Unfortunately, of the approximately 89 that we've received since January 1st, this is the one that, for whatever reason, got lost in that email box and didn't get transferred into the, we call it the public records hopper, which is our tracking system. We've spoken with Katie and told her what happened, and she's actually going to spend a day with our public records clerk in our office to see how that's done, and so she'll have a better understanding of the volume we get. It did show a problem with our system, frankly, that we had not built in enough redundancy in terms of being able to review what we receive and then what actually gets put into the response mode or the response project. So we have built in the past week, and hopefully we'll have it up and operational by no later than Friday, a new email box where all those email requested public records requests will be dumped into, and when I say we, everybody in the office of the county attorney will have access to that email box, and then on every Friday, we're going to check it against what's actually been put into the public records log and hopper. It's just a redundancy that prevents that from happening again. So to some extent, it was good news that we found this hole in our system. There's been some talk about how we're doing it in terms of handwriting these logs, and let me tell you why we're doing that. As you know, thank you, you blessed, and we have now purchased a fairly large computer system. It's a case management and a matter management tracking system. We spent 2 days, my staff spent 2 days in training last week on that system. We've got it installed, and we've been slowly pushing our work into that system. Public records will probably be the last thing we put into that system. It will have within it automatic notifications, automatic reminders to us, automatic letters that can be produced that we don't have to do them manually. So I told her just keep it by hand until we get that system in place instead of doing it twice in a separate computer system. So that's why you see it as a handwritten document now. We hope to have all completed, including the public records, sometime in late part of the summer, I would think, late July or early August. So thank you for that purchase. It is going to make our office a heck of a lot more efficient. So that's a quick update.
And I've got a question. Some of us get comments from the public about the fact that what appears to be requests for research as opposed to a public document is not coming quickly. And could you explain what your responsibilities are on that?
We often get requests that are not really public records requests. They are, can you find me information about this topic? And we usually respond by saying, well, that's not really a public records request, and we'll often communicate with administration. But if it's a citizen or somebody that, or a staff person or a board member, we will respond by saying, give us some time and we'll grab the information together, or we'll tell them, look, we can produce a document or we can create a document that answers your question, but it's going to take a significant amount of staff time to do just that. And if you want us to do that, you're going to have to pay us for the staff time and the effort. We do get those requests, I would say, at least once a week, frankly. Yes.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir, and thank you.
Mr. Jones, back to you. We have public hearings.
Yes, sir. The first is consider an ordinance granting economic development ad valorem tax exemption to Triangle Chevrolet Buick, Inc. We have a request from Triangle Chevrolet. They have met with the property appraiser's office and have submitted the appropriate documentation to us. What we're asking today from the board is if you wish to consider this ordinance and move it forward, we'll direct staff to prepare the supporting documentation that we have done with others, and we'll bring that back to you at the next board meeting.
We have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any commissioner comments?
Yeah, do we have any numbers on that?
We're working on them. We will provide them to you at the next meeting. We were awaiting direction from the board.
At the next meeting or before then? I need them before.
Oh, well, we'll have them,
Okay.
for you to, yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing. Members of the public. Mr. Fletcher.
Bill Fletcher, Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a brief slide presentation that will cover both my objections to Empire and to Triangle. I'd like to start with. Mr. Chairman, you had asked for facts. Before I get started, I wanted to tell you how happy I am to see Commander returning. I kind of wish you'd waited till after this meeting, but I'm glad you're here.
I thank you for your card as well.
If you go on, Rick. Walton County has owned roughly 350 acres since 2002, pretty much at no cost. In the spring of 2013, the ISP, Institute for Senior Professionals, started doing a study requested by Ken Pridgeon for the EDA in Walton County. As a result of that,
Reminder, we're dealing with Triangle Chevrolet public hearing right now.
Yes, sir. It's in here. The basics apply to both Triangle and to Empire. As part of that, Art Miller and I had an interview with all the commissioners and with Mr. Imfeld. I think you were chairman at the time, too. And at that meeting, of course, you implored us to bring something to Mossy Head. In fact, we remember you pleading, and to your credit, something needed to be done there. It had been sitting there for, I think, almost 12 years. We left there, drove to that site, and realized that looked like an excellent place for a truck stop. Art had done some research, asked me to contact some of the trucking companies, which I did. The only one where I could really talk to a human being was Love's, which tells you something, I think, about that company. And initially they were very negative, but when I explained to him the proximity to the military bases and the rail siding and the location, he actually looked it up on Google while I was on the phone, and he liked the idea that it was on the north side of I-10. He had referenced the Cottondale facility, which, if you've seen that facility, there's no comparison. Next slide, if you would, please. The value of this location is obvious, and I think once you've seen what Love's has put in there, along with McDonald's and Subway and the other companies that are coming in there, it's just a tremendous location for these type of businesses. And Love's, to me, Love's is the one that's put it on the map. Next slide, please. In December of 2013, Love's bought 15 acres at roughly $33,000 an acre. In the spring of 14, they invested $7 million to build their facility, along with McDonald's and Subway, bringing in at least 70 plus employees. Love's has never asked for a tax exemption, at least they haven't to this point. These are some of the land purchases that Love's had previously made, and if you go, to me, the one that's probably most comparable to Mossy Head would be the one in Cottondale, and there they paid a little over $47,000 per acre. And if you've seen that location, there's absolutely no comparison to Mossy Head. It's head and shoulders above that location. In June of 14, Empire Truck bought 10 acres at $20,000, a little over $20,000 an acre. Pretty good discount from what Love's had paid. They're bringing in 10 employees and $410,000 in payroll. Love's jumped right back in at $20,000 and bought another almost 8 acres. Then in August of 2014, months after the land purchase, Empire wrote the chairman, Imfeld, requesting a tax exemption. And in that letter, they stated that the reason they wanted it was to train employees.
And as all of you know, that's not the reason the exemption was granted. The referendum was passed to give you that ability to attract businesses to the county or to encourage them to expand. Okay, so they want a tax exemption. And what I would tell you is, well, one of the things that stands out to me is Empire has already profited dramatically. Today you voted to allow them, the county, to buy a lowboy for $130,000. They've already spent $1.5 million on dump trucks from Empire. And Empire, these are astute business people. I think this is the 9th facility they've built. My guess is it's probably going to be one of the most successful, primarily because of the location. This, to me, is one of the single most important facts I'd like for you to consider. Giving this exemption to Empire Truck won't add one job to Walton County, which is the intent of the tax exemption. Triangle Chevrolet, same thing applies here. Those folks, Commissioner Commander made the statement in one of the last meetings she was at. Their business has quadrupled since they made this move. Why would you want to give away this tax exemption? Is my time up, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to hear point of order. I'd like to hear the rest of this.
It's just a couple.
This was supposed to be on Triangle Chevrolet, and we spent most of the time talking about Mossy Head.
Empire.
So, and I've asked you previously to do it. Yes, your time's expired. Thank you.
I would like to hear. Point of order. I would like to hear the rest of his statement.
Okay.
And if the board would like to hear it, we can overrule you per Robert's Rules of Order.
You want to make a motion?
I move that we hear the rest of this presentation, obviously well thought out and well put together, obviously not wanting to be heard by any objector. So my motion is that we hear it because there are 2 projects that we hear it. We give him 10 minutes, 1 for each project.
I second that, and I'm sure you won't be coming back up after the Empire gate.
I'll come back after for the.
No, I mean, I think we can move ahead.
Let's just finish it. I mean, that's my motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second.
Okay, now, he's going to speak to both projects right now, not come
Yes,
back.
I'll finish. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's not coming back.
Okay. How much more time do you need to finish?
Roughly 2 minutes.
Okay. I'll withdraw my objection. Let him finish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Can't read too well from this. The other fact is that Triangle will not add 1 job. Giving this exemption will not add 1 job. And as I said, Commissioner Commanders pointed out, their business has quadrupled since they've moved. Why would we want to give away tax monies for no reason? Granting these exemptions, and this probably is one of the most important issues on my slide presentation. If you grant this exemption, and I believe Larry Jones has agreed with me, you will probably have everybody in the enterprise zone asking for that exemption. Right now, we're currently getting just over $1 million in ad valorem taxes in the 3 enterprise zones. Interestingly, only about 18,000, a little less than 18,000, comes from Mossy Head. The rest of it comes from Defuniak and Freeport. You're about to give away a tax exemption that would just about double the ad valorem taxes in Mossy Head. And I think it's just, you've seen this report before. It's a national report that tells you very specifically that these exemptions do not bring jobs to the counties. They're not effective whatsoever. You also got a letter from Matt Gaetz earlier this year. It's a scathing indictment of the enterprise zone system altogether. They're just not effective. I think my last slide here is asking, I'm pleading with you, do the right thing. Keep these tax dollars where we need them to use for drainage issues and road paving and other things that the county desperately needs. Thank you very much.
I have a comment, and I'd ask Melissa Thomason just for a moment to come up, because I had asked her to find out the amount of property taxes paid in the enterprise zones, and combined, Defuniak, Freeport, and Mossy Head is less than $500,000, although the one in Mossy Head is correct, $17,000. Ms. Thomason, where did you get those numbers from?
I got the property value values from the property appraiser's office and applied the millage to those at the 95% rate that we budget.
Thank you.
Mine were provided to me by Patrick Pilcher, and he actually broke it down. You had roughly 700,000 from Defuniak, a little over 300,000 from Freeport, and again, a little less than 18,000 from Mossy Head.
They don't match up the numbers I've got, but nonetheless, I'd like to entertain other public comments.
Thank you.
I'd like to, because
I'm sorry?
I'd like to say something, being, and you are correct, Mr. Fletcher. I did say that their business has increased, but I believe I said in the same meeting, if I didn't, it was in my head, that they have had to add, I think, 4 to 6 new employees because of their move. So, yes, their business has increased, which is wonderful because, we get all the money or part of the money from the sales of those tags and the sales tax on the cars. But they also, and I'm sure Mr. Lathinghouse or some of his staff, I believe they have told me they've put on 4 or 6 new employees. So they have added employees, sir.
We'll get that information when Larry gives us the numbers.
We got to move this. Yeah, we have to move this forward in order to get.
Do we buy cars and trucks from Triangle Chevrolet, the county and the sheriff and all that?
Yes.
Can you get us those numbers as well? How much the county has spent at Triangle?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? Mr. Lathinghouse.
I am Greg Lathinghouse, Lathinghhouse. Back when we made this application for this tax abatement, it was a program that this county commission had come up with, and they came up with it, I guess, after doing some amount of research that hopefully it would increase new investment in this county, either by existing businesses or by new businesses moving in. And so, therefore, our investment in our move, which is almost essentially like a new business because we've invested about $3.5 million, and we pretty much replaced everything that we had. In regard to employees, we have increased our employees. We started, once we knew that we were going to do this, we started hiring in 2013, and we had 18 employees. And from there, today, we have got 23 employees. Business has increased. It hasn't quadrupled, but business is a good bit better. But one of the things that I found pretty interesting, and my son got these figures from me, the sales tax generated in the old building in 2013 was $47,994. The county surtax was $3,314, and I think the county surtax goes directly to y'all. I think you get a small percentage of the $47,000. And then in 2014, our sales tax went to $88,664, and the county surtax went to $68.34. So that doubled. That was an increase to the county surtax of about $3,500. Again, in January, it wasn't quite as good. $29,000 in 14, and then $44,000 in 15. Surtax went from $3,000 to $4,000. And in February, the sales tax generated was $27,000 in 14, and in 15 it was $56,000, and the surtax went from $31 to $48. So I think my point is that y'all had an idea that if you came up with this program that maybe you'd get more investment in this county, and in fact that's what's happened, and the business climate has gotten better, I think, because of where we are and the public seeing us, people driving by, that it will possibly have an effect on future businesses wanting to come here. Now, if they find out that the county is helping because they want new businesses here, or they want businesses to increase their investment, then maybe this program is a good idea. other people invest here, then that would be accomplishing, what your objective was originally. I think that basically took care of what my thoughts were.
Tell me again your number of employees.
18 when our project started, and we're at 23 now. And
what kind of types of jobs did you have to add?
Sales jobs and technicians, office help, and kind of a maintenance person.
Okay.
And possibly, there'll be more coming. Of course, the automobile business is an up and down business, and this investment that we've made, I feel like, is the largest investment by any privately owned local company in the Funiac Springs, Walton County area, with the exception of what's going on in the south end. But as far as a business up here, I don't know of anybody that's made this kind of investment, and it's a long-term investment. We're 20 years out on the payback, and there'll be some years that'll come up that'll be real lean, because I've been in this business for 40 years, and I've seen times that we just about couldn't make it. It's okay right now, but this tax abatement program will be a lot helpful to us, and we will be able to reduce our debt, which is sizable.
Did you say you anticipate more jobs, possibly? More jobs? You hope to?
Yes.
Hope the business is up so you can bring more people in.
Right. I mean, we're already talking about probably needing one more salesperson. We'd hire 2 technicians right now if we could find them. Technicians are I think, more precious than brain surgeons. They're hard to come by.
If times get bad, you have to lay people off? You have to cut back on your employees if things get bad?
We have had to do that in the past, but it is a rarity. Usually we just tighten our own belt and keep those people working.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherhouse.
I can vouch for that. Of course, I will state publicly that I've known Mr., as my daughter used to call him, Laddenhouse, and his family for a very long time, and they have been committed to this city and this county, and I've seen them go through lean times, but he's always taken care of his employees, and I admire his business and work ethic.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Okay, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay.
Make a motion to move it forward. Is that what we do?
Mr. Jones.
If you're so inclined, we will bring you the workups that we do for these type projects. We'll need to re-advertise the public hearing. I think timing will probably only allow us to do that at the
24th. The second, let's see, this is the 14th, 28th, the meeting, April 28th, the meeting.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any commission comments? Any public comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is to consider an ordinance granting economic development ad valorem tax exemption to Empire Truck Sales pursuant to Section 196.1995 Florida statutes. Part of that, you're asked you to approve a performance agreement regarding the economic ad valorem tax exemption for Empire Truck Sales. Mr. Davis,
Motion to open the public hearing.
Have a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is that an aye or a nay?
Yeah, I said aye.
Okay.
Just one motion, or will it require one for the ordinance and one for the contract?
We would need one for the ordinance and one for the contract. We'd need to set 2 motions.
Hearing is open. Anyone wish to make a comment with regard to the Empire Truck Economic Development Grant? And Mr. Fletcher, thank you for your comments previously.
I have some comments. Do I speak now? And I do want to thank Mr. Fletcher. I know that your heart is in this. I've seen you, and you truly, there are 2 sides to every story. And I know that you feel strongly the way you do, and I appreciate and admire your thoughts. But I, as a commissioner starting in 2006, promised that we would try to bring jobs to this county. And 1995, well, before that, in the early 1990, the city of Uniac, for example, was about vacant downtown. And there's a whole bunch of people that have worked hard to bring business to the north end of this county. I think this is a tool. Yes, Empire's already coming, but this will help them perhaps expand or hire more employees. I think it's a tool that the state of Florida has given every county, and it's not just Walton County. Every county in the state of Florida and cities use this to try to attract businesses. And we just don't want to stop with Empire or Triangle or anybody else. We want to bring, I hope, I live in very short to see every parcel of land in Mossy Head with a viable business on it, and us looking for more land for an industrial park. So I respect your comments, Mr. Fletcher, but I have to say that I believe this is good for Walton County. It's good to show other businesses that want to come here, hey, we're willing to work with you. We're willing to do what it takes to bring you to Walton County so you can live here and pay taxes and buy groceries, because those people are going to buy cars, they're going to buy groceries, and they may not all live in Walton County. Commissioner Meadows has made that point, but these businesses are going to be spending money in Walton County and paying other taxes other than the ad valorem. So I still feel very strongly that I support this effort.
Other commissioners?
I have a couple comments. I think the people that voted on that to give, I think the key word in that is incentive. Do you want us to offer incentives in the way of ad valorem tax exemptions in order to get businesses to expand or bring business in? And I think, when you think about the way that that's worded, of course people are going to go, well, yeah, that's a great idea. But I think the issue at stake here is, these folks are already here. We did not have to ply them with exemption, dangle the carrot in front of them to get them to come here. And I think, in all fairness to the taxpayers, I don't think you give away something that should be used as an incentive that people are going to come here anyway. I have read and studied. I can't find one study. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal last weekend about North Carolina and the financial problems they're having because they have given so many tax incentives away that they are now in trouble. Panama City Council last night was voting on removing a tax incentive that they had given to a business. So they're fraught with problems. And I think if a new business is coming and they say, it's between you and, Lynn Haven, and we say, well, we'll give you these tax exemptions, and they say, okay, that does it, then I think that's what this was meant to be. So I'm leery of giving away taxes to people who are already here and that are pretty big corporations. That now the local folks, I think we need to probably help them, but the big corporations moving in that didn't ask for it in the beginning or are not in competition with anybody, I just think that we're giving away people's hard-earned tax money, and we all know how hard it is to earn a living and to pay taxes. So that's and I represent District 5. And I think that most of my constituents have said, don't give it away unless it's absolutely necessary to get the business here.
Commissioner Jones, did you have comments? Commissioner Chapman, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye. 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 And opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Need a motion either to approve or reject?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Commissioner,
In a second.
just for clarity, this would be the motion to approve the ordinance, and then we'd have to have a second motion on the agreement itself. Okay.
We have a motion and a second on the ordinance. Any further discussion? Public comment's been done. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2. Second item is the agreement for performance contract.
Now, it does state in there, let me ask Mark, that that we review this in 5 years, and if they're not, or we review this actually every year, and if they're not living up to what they say they're going to do,
That's correct. It has a reporting
then
requirement.
we can pull it.
That's correct. And it also has as we did in the others, it has an out for us if the tax base decreases by a certain percentage.
Then we can also add it as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further board comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
4-1, motion carries. Okay. Commissioner Meadows, any comment?
I have nothing at
Commissioner
this
Commander?
time.
Commissioner Jones?
Nothing.
Commissioner Chapman?
Nothing.
I have nothing.
Take a break.
If I may, Mr. Richard Flowers, that was before you earlier regarding Joe Duggar Road. We met with him briefly and discussed with him our pay grade possibility, and he was certainly amenable to have our folks come out and look and see what they could do on that basis. So I think they're out there now. So it may be as simple as them signing right of entry and doing our pay grade to take a grader in there and move some things around that'll help them with their current situation.
Right.
I'm
And
so-
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I meant to vote no on that last. I voted yes. I meant to vote no, so I'd like to change my vote on that last vote about the
3-2.
performance agreement. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Public comments.
What I was going to say is, I don't know if this is a good time to say it, but we have situations that come up on the weekend, and like emergency situations, like safety, and sometimes it's 2 weeks before we come to a commission meeting again. So I'd like to look at possibly some procedures that if we have emergency situations, we don't have to wait. That we give the Public Works permission or grant them. Or do we already have that?
I think we already
Well,
do.
they were
Yes,
telling
we
me we
can.
don't. So.
Yeah, to the best we can. Yeah.
Well, we may not have anything structured or written, and if
Okay.
that's where you want to get to, we certainly can work to that end. But we,
Okay. Thank you.
we
I'm
try to
sorry.
assess the situation.
I did think of something. I'm sorry. I did think of something. I'm sorry now that she mentions emergency. The intersection of 395 and 30A, we were to negotiate with the Sheriff's Office to do some traffic control there. Where is that? And I got a call this weekend because it's spring break weekends. I got a call this weekend about the severity of the traffic down there, and I wanted to know what the status of that was, because we said we'd do it spring break and the major holidays and Saturdays.
Well,
We'd check
we
in,
did
check
that
out.
last year.
Yeah.
We've been directed to move it forward this year. We probably haven't, but we'll get on that today.
If you would, thank
Yes,
you.
yes, ma'am.
I see all three women, and now I've got to ask a question. Open it up.
Get ready, Bill.
I have not been getting the chatter, maybe you have, Commissioner, about the spring break like we did last year. Does it seem to be a calmer year?
The thing I heard was the first 2 days of spring break in Miramar, they arrested 120 underage drinkers. It's underage drinkers was a huge, and then I think there's been like 400 or 500 arrested since then. But evidently spring break is really bad in the Miramar during this time period, and then when the high school kids come, it moves down to Seaside in that area. So a lot of underage drinking. There was an arrest report in the paper, one whole page, of people who had been arrested for underage drinking. One guy got caught for, I think, selling pot in the dunes and arrested. So, it's the criminal activity that, and there was a house party where the parents were serving alcohol to 15-year-olds. So that's the main thing is that.
It seems like we haven't been getting as many phone calls.
Well, and Panama City made, I think Panama City made the national news. They were on either Fox or CNN. So But the sheriff is they're all doing an excellent job down there. I mean, it's contained as much as I think humanly possible. So they are doing a great job.
Sheriff's doing a
Yeah, they
bang-up
are
job
doing a
this
great
year.
job.
We appreciate that, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can we back up to Commissioner Meadows and the Sheriff's Office at 39538? If the board would take action, or if you would like, if they're in agreement with the same circumstances and conditions we had last year, if we can go ahead and move on that, if the board would give us permission to move that forward, if under the same terms and conditions last year.
Make a motion that we continue that from last year with the agreement with the sheriff in the same manner.
I don't even know I think just staff direction should get it accomplished.
But we'll cover it. I'll second it.
Well, I think we have to pay them.
Yeah, there's an expenditure involved with it, but if, I don't know why it would be any different than last year, but if it's not, then you'll take that action, we'll do it.
More thing.
Let's get the motion in a second. Out of the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Any public comment on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, just one other thing. The Hampton Inn hearing on April 20th, have we confirmed a location?
Emerald Coast Middle School, 4 o'clock on the 20th. Yes, ma'am.
Emerald Coast Middle School on 98, correct? That's the one on 98 at 4 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we got additional public comments. Anybody in the public? Further comments? Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back with the...
A motion to approve with the condition that the property is located north of I-10. The applicant has no current code violations, that there is a bond to issue reclamation that is similar to the current bond and the current ordinance. And on parcels less than 40 acres, the applicant may excavate a maximum of 12.5% of the total acreage of the property rather than 10% in this draft. And that was their recommendation. Scott Caraway's here if you have any particular questions as far as the ordinance and its application and its technical merits of that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn over any questions for staff.
I got something.
Ms. Chapman?
All right, I have read through the Planning Commission's report, and I have read through the proposed ordinance as changed concerning this, and I'll give you my thoughts on some of these recommendations that came out of planning. Property located north of I-10. I'm in total disagreement with that. I'm okay with no current code violations. As far as a bond, that right now I'm kind of not sure what to do on that, because if I think whoever the landowner may be, if he is trying to sell this dirt to whomever, that construction company should be made part of the contract that they go back there and reclaim it according to our code as far as vegetation, slopes, etc. I have no grief with the 12.5% of acreage for parcels less than 40 acres. Now, one thing that I have advocated for earlier on in my administration was that those individuals that want to have a pond dug, Uplands Pond, right now it is crime, if you will, for them to give it away or even sell the excess dirt that may be there. I totally disagree with that. My house and property is located south of I-10. Right now, if I wanted to go out there and build a pond for my cows, I'm not going to be able to give the dirt away that is in excess, and I should have that latitude, not only me, but any other resident anywhere in the county. If they're going to dig a pond, they got excess dirt, they need to have the ability to give it away or sell it, instead of having to post it and put it on their property and worry about screening it and whatever to keep it from doing any environmental issues. But and kind of also looking at it, it's competition. You've got, as long as that 5-acre excavation site is restricted to a certified public works project, whether it's state or the county, and it's so designated as such that a person ought to be able to do something with his land. And I know this goes against the grain for those that have the large borrow pits, such as Mr. Lee Perry and Lawana Cheatham and others along the Rock Hill Road. But that's my thoughts on it. As far as north of I-10, I think it ought to be north of 20. As far as no current code violations, I agree with that. As far as the bond, that's for, I guess, for discussion, whatever the board wishes. And I'm okay with the 12.5% for parcels less than 5 acres.
Now, I think there should be a bond required. I think that makes someone more responsible. My only concern is that once, and I see the ponds is to me, they're two separate issues. You dig a pond, yeah, you need to get rid of that dirt because all it does is cause erosion to me. If you're selling that dirt for a project that's a road looking in front of your house, then I think that land should be reclaimed just like we require any of the large pit owners to reclaim their land. We have a whole bunch of hundreds of holes in Walton County now in the ground, and I think that if they're going to use their property, I mean, they have a right to sell their product, but they should be held to the same standards as the big boys as far as reclaiming and making sure that it doesn't erode, it doesn't cause problems on their neighbor's property, and that it's reclaimed. And maybe a bond would make them do that. I don't know. You know, I know in the past in some places, as far as housing and that sort of thing, we should have required bonds from people. We wouldn't be left with subdivisions sitting, you know, but that's my only comment.
Well, I agree with you in some respects on that, Commissioner. There are a lot of holes out there, but a lot of those holes are decades old.
Yes.
They've been out there for 20, 30, 40 years prior to any type of regulations coming in. And I just want the flexibility of that landowner, if he's going to do a pond and he hasn't impacted the wetlands, that he has the ability to either give or sell the excess dirt. Right now, it is prohibited across the board. This new ordinance will allow that to happen. We're not talking about across the bay, because I don't think you'd be digging any holes out there of consequence. But now, as far as the other part, yes, I understand there's two separate issues. The pond for agricultural means, and you got the other one dealing with the commercial side of it. If they have the proper super duper dirt, I brought that back up again. I think
Has to be
super duper dirt.
Super duper dirt. Yes.
But, you know, we're just trying to, you know, there may be a site somewhere up in 331, 81 that is closer to maybe buy that 5 acres of dirt for one of our projects per se, instead of paying the extra transportation costs it takes to get it from a pit maybe off of Rock Hill Road and transport it 30 miles one direction. So it is a little bit of opportunity for the county to also save some funds as far as construction projects.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned in your comments that for local or state public works projects, how tight is the language in it currently, Wayne, that says it has to be for a public works type project? I think it says it has to be identified where it's going or something along those lines. So
I believe so.
So
yes,
what are you interested in tightening that language up so that it would be a public works, whether it's state or county project, as opposed to a condominium that's being built where they're buying fill material?
Well, I'm more interested in the public works side of it. And I think if we could tighten that language up there, then that would keep that person from wanting to build a condominium or whatever.
Well, I think that makes a big difference in the impact of the ordinance on perhaps the providers today. That if it's a road project or a subtype project as such, as opposed to a housing development to buy foundation fill or those type things, that if it's a public project, I think that significantly changes where this would be applicable.
Well, can somebody, Wayne, I don't know if you can answer this question, concerning the bond, how do you determine the size of the bond for a particular 5-acre parcel, let's say?
I'd probably defer to Scott on that. If he has any suggestions as far as the environmental effects, I think that's what the bond will be for reclamation and all, and how that could be calculated.
I'm talking about for the reclamation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Caraway, C-A-R-A-W-A-Y, Public Works. The current language in the Land Development Code, I believe, requires $1,500 per acre, and that is the current bond requirement, and I believe that is the recommendation from the Planning Commission to stay with the current language in the code. So a 5-acre tract would be $7,500 for reclamation.
And you don't pay that much for the bond, that's just what the bond.
Bond is good.
It's good for. Yeah, okay. That was the question.
Oh.
And the reclamation would have to start within 60 days after they file a notice of completion with the county, and they'll have approximately 180 days to complete that reclamation.
And in the event they don't, the code is going to cite them, correct?
Yes.
And
the
it
county
goes
would
before the
collect on
code board and then subsequently could be fined.
And collect on the bond.
Collect on the bond.
Right.
Can anybody tell me how difficult it may be or not to get a bond? A private citizen that wants to do it.
I'm not sure about that.
Commissioners, it's not that particularly hard.
Okay.
Depending on the bonding company, you just have to provide proof of your ability to pay the bonding company back should the bond be approved.
Okay.
And would we be requiring a bond for a pond? I see them as two separate issues. I don't think we need a bond for a pond.
No, the bond is only required for the dry upland borrow pit.
Well, again, I just want to emphasize, right now, the present thing is that we've got people, and I won't mention any names, that are out there digging ponds, and they're giving the dirt away. It's flat. It's the way they're doing it. Some of them may be selling it, but they don't need an extra 200 yards of dirt in a pile out there, so their neighbors is willing to take it off their hands and fill gullies or whatever. So I'd like that to be part of this rewrite, at least that part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if it's less than 5 acres and you want to give it to your neighbor, you should be able to. If you want to sell it, you should be able to. If you want to take it over to Larry's house and dump it in his front yard, you should.
He could use it.
You should be able to. So.
Prefer in the back, but I prefer it in the backyard. But got a swimming pool that needs some.
Well, Commissioner Chapman, in order to get public comments, are you making the motion as how you want it modified?
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to, let me get my notes. As the draft ordinance that I have here now, be a motion to accept with the following modifications. One, that this would apply to north of the Choctawhatchee Bay, that there be a bond to ensure reclamation, and on parcels of less than 40 acres, a maximum of 12.5 acres of the property. 12.5? Yeah. Those were recommendations by the planning board. Okay, it's not in there. That's to make that motion to make those changes as I outlined.
And Commissioner Chapman, can you include under B3 in the ponds? And I do it all the time, and I just noticed that we used an acronym, BMP, for best management practice. Can we just use the term best management practice so we don't have any confusion about?
Okay, and as requested, we'll put the BMP as best management practices language.
Commissioner, are you satisfied with the language regarding the projects that's it can go to, or do you want that tightened up to be identified as public works types projects?
And I'll modify it to include bona fide public work projects, whether it's state or local.
So they can't give it to their neighbor or sell it to their neighbor?
No.
They have to use it for a public works project?
That's what I'm advocating, is that the 5 acre, if they want to mine that 5 acres, it has to be for a bona fide county or state public works project for road building, not just to open up a pit and start selling it to your neighbors.
But if you're digging a hole for a pond, can you give it to your neighbors?
That's what I'm advocating. If you dug a hole and you got excess material from your pond, you can give that away or you can sell it, whatever you want to do.
Okay, so why couldn't you sell it? Why couldn't you sell the 5 acre pit dirt to somebody who was close by building something and it would save them money?
Well, I understand that, but I'm thinking that we're trying to accommodate the landowner and also make sure that we ain't just got a bunch of holes out there going in. So that's why if it's a bona fide public works project, then you've got a little bit more control or oversight of that particular operation that may be going on.
Okay, and by public works, do you mean like, let's say that the Children's Advocacy Center needed some dirt, or let's say that the health department, public works meaning our public works department, or just public works in general?
What I'm talking about is for road building projects.
Public road building. Okay.
And they do have to reclaim their pits just like the big boys.
Yes, that's part of the bond.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify, make sure that the staff understands. So we're gonna clarify the definition of a small scale mineral extraction to.
We don't have a second yet.
I'm
so
sorry.
We don't have anything that's on the board. We haven't any public comment yet.
Let me ask this question too. Okay, in both of these instances, it's north of the Choctawhatchee Bay.
That's
for
correct.
both. Okay.
For both of them, north of the Choctawhatchee Bay.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Do we have a second?
I will second his motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more commissioner comment before we go to public comments? Public comments. Anyone wish to make a comment? Mr. Perry.
Lee Perry, P-E-R-R-Y. I'm not sure if any of y'all were on the commission back when the original planning order came up, but if you remember, it was pretty much the Hampton Inn of the day back then. I know because I had the pleasure of going through the first mining ordinance, and the people were still very upset about things that were going on. In fact, the reason they were so upset, and I think you mentioned it, Commander, that there was a lot of holes all over the ground, and the environmental impact from those erosions and everything were detrimental to creeks and things in the area. It was, according to the Walton County Environmental Department, they had identified 247 unreclaimed pits. And as you said, Commissioner Chapman, there was a lot of them that were back before anything was required to be done. But I do think that the bond is a good idea for any type of upland borrow pit activity. I think that the original ordinance worked very well. It eliminated probably 95 to 98% of the illegal mining that was going on at the time. I believe that the ordinance should be held to north of I-10. I think Scott Caraway told us at the Planning Commission meeting that the original intent was to help projects in rural areas that did not have access to materials close by, and there are 7 pits that are legal and mining south of I-10, 3 on Rock Hill Road. There's also 1 on 331 just north of Freeport, and there's at least 3 in the St. Joe Spoil area just north of 98. So there's not a shortage of material in those areas. In fact, we're kind of running over each other trying to get material sold. So it seems to me if you lessen if you allow the competition as you're talking about, really what you're doing is you're giving unfair competition because they don't have to go through the same qualifications that we did. And also in the process of doing that, you're weakening the environmental qualifications on those things, because what you're doing is you're taking out a lot of the regulations that are going to be required if they have to go through a full mining ordinance. So you're going to be increasing the environmental impacts on those things. As far as the ponds go, I agree. They're a legitimate request for ponds. I don't have a problem with ponds and people selling their material. I do think that's something that could be, misused. I know in the past there have been 2 requests for ponds that were greater than 5 acres, and it looked like to me that these were both requests that came due to the fact that they had applied or gone through they had initially gone to the planning department for a development order pre-app process and then didn't go back anymore when they found out the qualifications. Both of those requests were for 15-acre ponds, so I think if you limit it to 5 acres, it's probably going to help a lot in that. I would request that you stick to what the Planning Commission brought you, which was to keep it north of I-10, leave the reclamation bond in place, and as far as the ponds, I don't have a problem with them north of the bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairley. Any other public comment? Kevin, was that you raising your hand or dropping it? Come on up.
Kevin Chilcutt, Chilcutt. This is important to me and dear to me in a number of ways, and I will tell you what Mr. Perry said and what Mr. Chapman said, both of them pretty much speak for me. I would see the north of I-10 is fine for my needs, but north of 20 or north of the bay or at least north of Rock Hill Road I think would be better due to the topography of the land and it being higher there. But let me tell you, I did a report a while back that kind of started before you made the changes. And when I went off, I guess it was High Lonesome or somewhere, and I walked down behind a property owner, and he took me down there, and I saw a creek from an old borrow pit that had done. That was a mining operation. It's not a borrow pit, it's a mine. It's an open mine. And the creek that was silted over, messed up, trees dead. I mean, having grown up in Northwest Florida in the area, it just really made me cry. I mean, it was terrible. And y'all took action and did, I think, a very good job in coming up with the mining ordinance and coming up with how to do it. I think we made improvements. I think Mr. Perry is an example of how it can be done right, because we do have valuable land, as evidenced by Mossy Head and the economic there. My needs, I have 15 acres. We had some high dry land. The city said the airplane might fall on us, so they bought our property. We took the majority of that money to move me and the rest of my family. There were 11 different people I had to move. And we bought 15 acres off Kings Lake Road. And there's a small creek. We went into debt, actually, to buy an extra 5 acres for a total of 15 in order to preserve land that really won't ever be used. I just want it for my kids. There's a creek head and wetland area and some very large pines on the hill on the other side. I want to make sure that's preserved. But in the upland part, it's an old hayfield. Upland part, I want to build a pond. We're talking probably an acre or less pond. The land is very good. Since it's near the bottom of that hayfield, it's very rich topsoil, and underneath there's a good road base. Matter of fact, y'all have a borrow pit at the very end of our road, at the end of Stewart Drive. And so it's a really good clay, because I put a well down by hand, and that was an awful hard thing to do. And I just want to make a pond for my kids, my family. Most of y'all know my kids, and for my family to be able to use. Right now, I don't have a place to put what I pull out of there. I can use a little bit in the driveway and stuff, but I'm really stuck. Not having a bond on a pond is helpful, because I really probably couldn't afford a bond or get a bond. So I need that, and I need to be able to have a small pond. I'm willing to trade somebody or sell a little bit or whatever. I just want to build a pond big enough for my kids to maybe have some fish and do something. I did have the water management came out. They brought some green whore young bee, and They made him identify all the plants, and they said, here's some flags, just build on this side, you don't need a permit, you can level it off, but don't build anything that will stop the flow of water. As long as you do that, it's self-contained, you're good. They explained it all to me and everything, so we're ready to go. My family would like to do this, and this is the only thing that's stopping us, so I appreciate any consider. Again, Mr. Chapman and Mr. Perry, y'all can debate where the line is, but what they've made comments is great for me, just as a regular citizen.
Thank you, Mr. Chilcott. Mr. Carter, I believe you wanted to speak?
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in local government. Gail and I, on our land that we live on and homestead, would like to build, consistent with NRCS, a federal agent, and Northwest Florida Water Management, the state regulatory agent, a 15-acre, 15-foot deep pond. They've all had a look at this. We would invite anyone with the county or their regulations to have a look at this to see that we're not damaging the environment, we're not digging holes, we're not interfering with our neighbor's right to peace and quiet. We just want to build this pond because it fits our 347-acre block, which may be unique, part and parcel to our situation. Plus, the geologists tell us that the upland pond we propose will hold water. There's water there. It's agreeable with Northwest Florida Water Management to use it. There's a clay base there to support it. The extraction from that pond, roughly 350,000 cubic yards of material, would go to Anderson, Columbia to support the 331 project. It's a win-win-win for us. We make a little money off the dirt. We get our pond. We get to go in the fish farming business. It's as simple as that.
And the pond would be 15 acres? 15-acre pond? Is that what you're saying? 15-acre pond?
15-acre
Pond.
Yes, ma'am. The 15-acre, 15-foot deep pond is permitted and would be allowed by Northwest Florida Water Management and Natural Resources.
That
the
sounds
federal
like
agent.
that sounds to me like a man-made lake. So why couldn't you? Why couldn't because developers put man-made lakes on their properties all the time? Why couldn't you do that under a different permit for the county? Because that would be a man-made lake. To me, that would not be a pond. I think a pond, you're talking about just a little less than 5 acres, but 15-acre lake is somewhat different.
Scott, are you out there? Okay, Scott, is there a definition somewhere in the statute somewhere concerning whether a pond is X number of acres and below and a lake is above?
No, sir, there's not that I'm aware of. The Water Management District actually considers an upland dug pond, which is 15 acres or less in size, does not exceed a greater average depth of 15 feet and does not impact wetlands as an exempt pond through their activities. So the pond Mr. Carter is referencing would be an upland dug pond exempt through the Water Management District.
So could he do that with current rules now?
The rules now is he could still dig the pond. The material that he excavated would have to stay on his side.
Right. And I would like to see that change too. I agree with Commissioner Chapman.
But 15 acres on 340-something acres? 347 acres. Yeah, probably. I don't know, calculate it. Got to calculate. 347?
Mr. Carter, would you like to continue, or is that your comments?
Did you want to continue?
No, that was the extent of my request, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Mr. Dice, you had a question about some wording, and let's clarify that before we vote on this.
We have to close the public hearing before we vote.
It's not a public hearing.
Oh, it's not a public hearing.
Your questions.
I think we've figured our questions out. Scott and I talked about the language. I think we're okay with it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Any other commissioner comment?
So he could build a pond, 15-acre pond, and he could sell under to whoever, Anderson,
Columbia, yeah.
whoever. Okay, so that would be acceptable under the new language.
Yes. That's, yeah, that I've offered, yes.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion on, a second on the floor.
We do?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Now, does this move this to the second public hearing, or is this it?
Second one.
That's what I'm talking
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have the last item under legislative is number 2, the transit sign ordinance. I'll ask Matt Carpenter to come up and brief the board on this ordinance.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department, CARPENTER. This is the first reading of a proposed amendment to the Land Development Code to provide an opportunity to permit transit stop signs that are presently not allowed by our code. In the event we ever have a transit plan, either public or private, we would be prepared to permit signs that are presently prohibited by our code.
In fact, this is primarily on private property?
Yes, sir.
A resort or
Yeah.
whomever that may have a tram stop?
Yeah.
Just the ability to erect a sign that identifies that location.
And I think too, can we add the language that it has to match, it has to be consistent, it has to be the same material and the same color and
The consistency of the format of the sign?
yeah.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that.
It has to be made out of the same material because we obviously want them to know that it's a transit stop and not be redesigned by every resort on 30A. So if we could add, must be consistent sign design, materials, and color as determined by the planning department or a planning director or somebody.
We can certainly add some.
What now? You have Fortes?
Fortes, my wife says, man, like what it looks like.
Well, maybe we're to let the planning director's wife review it.
I think we could probably find the appropriate
Okay.
experienced person.
And I know that Jim Bagby and the TDC is doing a charrette for public spaces and such. So, and they want to come up with one thing for the beach accesses too, like just one sign. So maybe the transit sign is part of that whole project, and it could fit in with the whole. Okay.
We can certainly.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have to take public comment?
You have to take public comment, but to do that, I have to have a motion in a second.
Okay. Motion to accept public comment, to open the public comment hearing.
A motion to accept their recommendations with your modification.
Okay. Motion to accept their recommendations with my modifications.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other commissioner comment before we go to public comments? Anyone from the public like to comment? Seeing none. Motion's on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, I would assume, given the advertisement requirement, the second reading would be here in April 28th. Is that correct, Mac?
We would propose to have the second hearing April 14th at the South Walton Annex.
It's up to y'all.
On or after 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
which
that's
would
good.
be our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
You'll have time to do all the advertisement.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the next items are quasi-judicial. They be sworn in.
Sure. Anyone who anticipates testifying regarding any matter on the quasi-judicial docket today, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you would give before this board will be the truth? Thank you. Has anyone had any ex parte contacts regarding any quasi-judicial matter before the board? Hearing none. And does anyone have any objections to any of the notices that were published for today's hearings? There are none. Mr. Dice.
Mr. Chairman, the first item on our QJ items is number 3, Hidden Palm subdivision. I'll ask Tim Whaler from our staff to give a brief presentation on this.
Good morning, Tim Whaler, Planning and Development Services. This is a major development order application. It was submitted by Saks LeSueur. They're requesting the approval of a 20-lot, single-family subdivision on 2.5 acres with a future land use of neighborhood infill. The project is located on the south side of Hatchie Road, 300 feet west of South Holiday Road. There are no known code violations on the subject property. Unless other evidence is presented to the contrary, the proposed project will meet the requirements of the Walton County Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code with the following conditions: that a copy of the MPDES Notice of Intent and Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan be provided prior to project commencement. A sidewalk buyout fee is required for one side of the proposed residential street. Recreational lands buyout fee would be required at the time of platting, and a proportionate fair share contribution would also be required at the time of platting to cover the transportation impacts. Be happy to answer any questions you have on the project with staff.
I have a question on the parking on each lot. It looks like it's a private street, correct? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Private street. It looks like it's if I can't read, 40 feet wide, but part of that includes part of the driveways. No sidewalks, except maybe on one side. Is that one side?
Yes, ma'am. There's proposed sidewalk on one side.
Sidewalks on one side, the other side. Where are people going to park, number one? And number two, where are people going to park if they can't park on that little slab that's in front of the 3,000 square foot house? Because this is down in the resort area, so it's going to be rentals probably. So my comment is that when you design things like this, you're just creating a huge problem.
The current proposal as shown does have 2 parking spaces on lot, and that would limit the total to 3 bedrooms per unit, and that would meet the Land Development Code requirements.
3 bedrooms, and then 2 cars parked side by side?
Yes, ma'am.
Side by side. Okay, no garages or anything?
We didn't get any specific floor plans with the project.
Okay, so 2 cars, so that's it. 2 cars per house, and no overflow, no party parking, no nothing. My comment for the record would be that, if you're in the resort zone, you need to think about designing something that is going to accommodate all the cars that come. 1 car per bedroom usually shows up, maybe even more. So, I don't know where these people are going to, I don't know how the fire truck's going to get through there if they park on the side of the road. So, anyway, that would just be my comment.
Tim, I would like to ask about the stormwater retention and treatment. The basins that they have here, are they based upon what storm event? 25, 100, 200?
The stormwater pond has been designed for the current Land Development Code standards.
25?
Yeah, I'd have to.
If it's a closed basin, it might be 100, but is this a closed basin? Do you know, Melissa?
It's a 100-year storm event that they've
Designed to?
Okay.
It must be a closed basin then. Well, at least they've got retention ponds and not retention drainage easements on the lots. They do have.
They have drainage for transportation of that down through
The lot.
to the
Need to identify.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have any comments on the parking, Melissa?
Tim, are you finished right now?
Yeah, if you don't have any further questions.
Yeah, they'll have the applicant come up then, please.
I apologize. I heard the questions. Melissa Ward, W-A-R-D for the record, from Saxon LeSueur for the applicant. The applicant is, let me address to the proposals right now for the housing is up to 2 stories, no more than 1,800 square feet, and the parking will be on site, not in the road. So they're not going to, there's not enough room, you're right, for them to be parking in the road, and they're not intended so far for any kind of rentals. The person who's building them or selling the houses, individual houses, not for rental. But I mean, I don't know how we regulate them not to be able to rent them.
Yeah, you can't really. You know, if they rent them, they rent them. But so why do you, if it's going to be only 1,800 square foot, why do they have every lot marked out with a square footage of the house?
That's the square footage of the property. The 3,000 square feet is the property.
Is the lot, the platted lot?
Is the size of the lot.
Oh, okay.
The buildable area is much smaller. The buildable area in just, if it was a single story, is less than 1,000 square feet. And the houses will be 2-story to make 1,800 square feet maximum.
Okay. Okay, that would be nice if they put that on the plan somewhere, because I guarantee you they'll go in and go, no, I can build.
I thought it was 3,100 square foot house.
Well, that's what you usually.
Well, and the plat will, we can have the plat reflect the appropriate, I mean, the site plan, it probably doesn't show on there, but the site plan clearly shows the setbacks, and they're standard setbacks, 20 in the front, 15 feet in the rear, 7.5 on each side.
Right.
And so, and the drainage easement that is in the rear of the lots is to convey stormwater to the stormwater ponds, so that they're not having any on-site stormwater around the houses.
Okay, so nobody could put well, I guess they could put a pool in, but they'd have to put it outside of the drainage easement, correct?
They're actually probably not going to be able to put a pool on the property with the size of the buildable area.
Okay.
And it's not, they're going to have a community pool. See, this Hidden Palms is a 20 lots that is going to be by access connected to the Siboney PUD final phase, phase 2, which is 11 lots, and there's a swimming pool at the end of that subdivision that the associations will share.
They can use it. And then what is the access into this property? Down Hatchu?
This property, along with Siboney Phase 2, it's just slightly, west of South Holiday Road, and the property is accessed through, if you'll let me turn this.
Yeah.
This is East Hatchie Road. The
Yeah.
developer will improve East Hatchie Road to include some stormwater into this area from the road, and also Bachelor's Button will be improved for both Siboney and Hidden Palms, allowing for stormwater to retain here on this part of the property in those ditches.
Okay, so could you cut through Button Road and go up here and Hatchu and out to South Holiday? Could you do that?
You mean, could they come off of South Holiday and up through the subdivision? Yes.
Yeah, and go down to Siboney, other phases.
They could go down to Siboney, however, Siboney is a cul-de-sac.
Okay,
So they couldn't cut all the way through.
Okay, so Siboney will be cutting through them, probably, most likely.
Most likely.
Okay.
But another interesting note here is that Siboney this is Miramar Palms, which is a 10-lot subdivision. Currently, I think it has some FEMA trailers or something on it. However, this is actually a residential subdivision, and here is the Siboney RV park. These are not connected through. There's no driveway here. This is actually a lot. So
Okay.
all of the traffic that comes through here will come. It will not go through Siboney down through condo units or anything. And it won't go down through the Siboney phase because there's a cul-de-sac there. So
Okay.
they'll come in on these roads. And
Okay.
out these roads.
Okay. And if you could put the lot, these are lot sizes, but it's hard to tell because usually they put the square footage on the pad of the house. If you could distinguish that as, the square footage of the homes on the plat.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
And we'll have to have association documents when we get ready to plat anyway.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else?
Commissioners, any other questions? Anyone from the public wish to make a comment?
I move that we approve with conditions and add the condition that they put the maximum house size and story levels on the final plat.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, number 4 on our agenda is the Burke Mullins replat. I'll ask Tim Weller to come up and give a brief on this project as well.
Good morning again. Tim Whaler with the Planning and Development Services Department. This was a plat application submitted by Emerald Coast Associates. They're requesting approval to replat Lots 8 and 9 of the Beach Islands First Edition. The plat consists of .375 acres with a future land use of residential preservation. This is a minor replat consistent with a settlement agreement to resolve some encroachment issues due to a surveyor's error. There are no known code violations on the subject properties. Unless other evidence is presented to the contrary, the request will meet the requirements of Florida Statute Chapter 177, Walton County Comprehensive Plan, and Land Development Code. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioners? Is the applicant present?
No, it looks pretty straight.
Straightforward.
I don't believe the applicant's here.
Any public comment? Seeing none?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the last item is number 5, the Forest View Village PD amendment. We have a request to continue this item until the April 14th BCC meeting at the South Walton Annex at 5.
4.
4, I'm sorry.
Is it 4 or 5?
Well,
5.
5?
yeah, ours is at
Yeah,
5.
it's gotta
our
be at
items.
5,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Is this going to be the same material, you think? So we could just keep this material?
There were some concerns raised. I believe that the project manager from our staff is meeting with their engineer.
Okay.
And so if there's anything additional that comes out of that, we'll certainly revise the agenda and make sure the commissioners have the revised information.
Revised thing, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you'll have to reprint all this stuff? Okay.
Potentially.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other items?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're adjourned.
How did that fun run go for you? The one up in